Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back for another week of growing with my fellow growers. I just got a little bit of the, I don't know, boxing announcer voice in my head there for a second, but I'm Jack Greenstock, and welcome back, everybody. Hope you're having a great week. And I'm going to pass it over first to my regular panelist this week, Spartan Grow.
Thank you, Jack. I am Spartan Grown. You can find me on Instagram at Spartan Grown, all one word with no spaces. Otherwise, you can just shoot me an email, spartangrown@gmail.com, and I can help you with your lighting or growing questions.
We are happy to have you
We're happy to
back.
have you back.
Next up,
Next
Dr.
up,
MJ.
Dr. MJ. Hey guys, Dr. MJ Coco from cocoforcannabis.com. I also do commercial consulting work. You can find that on drmjcoco.com. Excited to talk to Boudica Seeds, our guest tonight, and be back with you guys.
Happy to have you
Happy to
back.
have you back.
And
And
without further
without
ado,
further
we've got Boudica Seeds. I think somebody might have the YouTube up because I heard a little bit of echoing. I don't know if it was Doc or Boudica, but yeah, as long as we mute the YouTube in the background and we'll just vibe through the Zoom piping out to the YouTube. But welcome to our special guests from, I don't know if you're necessarily going to say, I think I wrote it in the title already, but Boudica Seeds. Welcome.
Oh, thanks for having me on. I'm Boudica from the UK. I'm a breeder, and you can follow me on Instagram at boudica.seeds or check out my website, boudicaseeds.co.uk. And thanks for having me on.
Thank you for joining us. To be honest, I think you are going to be a little bit of a new introduction and new name to a lot of the people here. Most of our audience is in the US, probably like 70 to 75%, but we do have UK, Germany, France, Australia, people all over the world do tune in. So it's nice to have international names and, not so much faces because legality in certain countries, it's less friendly to jump on and be able to show our faces and stuff, especially if you're doing things like making cannabis seeds, which I think you said it's okay to have them, but not to make them or something like that. And you're
Yeah, you
still in the
can
place.
sell and possess them, but you're not allowed to make them. Once you've taken the seeds out of the plant, it's okay, but when they're in there, it's not okay.
Big no-no. And yeah, we've mentioned and talked with people in the past from the UK, and the illegalities there can make things a lot more difficult. And we used to have Growing with My Fellow Lads was a spin-off of this that turned into like the UK Grow Room 420 podcast, and Percy's Grow Room started a podcast as well. So a
Oh
few
yeah, I know Percy. I've been in his podcast a few times.
great dudes over there. I'm probably going to be stopping back in because I actually just finished my book, 50 Strains of Purple, talking about genetics and cannabis strains that grow and finish purple. I had written it and I had gotten all the photos together, but I hadn't actually formatted it. I had a guy who did that before for me, and he had medical issues, then technical issues, and sort of lost touch. So I figured it out on my own. Had like a little bit of an 8 month setback with technical difficulties, but thankfully, I overcame those technical difficulties recently. Had a little bit of time with a client out of town, figured it all out, and now I've basically just got the cover and the final conclusions and a little bit of read and revise just to make sure everything's super clean. It'll be nice with I've got a few people who volunteered to edit and pre-read and stuff, but I'll be doing pre-orders and stuff probably starting next week once I talk to the publisher or the printer, I should say. I'm the publisher, but I have a local guy that I work with and do some printing, and they're a cannabis fan themselves. When I printed 50 Strains of Green, they're like, "Oh, I'm from South Africa and I love the Durban." And like, is it okay if I print myself an extra copy or two and make a book for myself? And I was like, yeah, of course, like no problem. Like, but they were really excited about it, so I'm happy to work with them. I've done two different printings, and the first one was just some random person that I found, also in Southern California, but not quite as local. This one is literally like in my backyard kind of thing. I drive by him on the way to work, so cool situation, and I'm looking forward to that. But without focusing too much on myself, because we have special guests this evening, I want to turn the focus back on to you, and maybe you could tell us a little bit about your background. When did you start growing cannabis, and when did that transition into breeding cannabis? And from there, what are maybe some of the strains that people may know you for, or if they don't know you, what are you most proud of in terms of your work?
Yeah, so I started smoking cannabis when I was 13. I also started growing it when I was 13 as well, just on my windowsill. And when I was about 16, basically all the weed in the UK went from being really good to being pretty crap. So I, like a lot of people back then, this is like the early noughties, started growing it for ourselves. So I just got some lights from a local hydro shop and just set them up in my cellar. And yeah, it just kind of went from there. Like I just basically stopped buying weed off people and just kept myself in supply. And then over time, I sort of acquired like a decent collection of mother plants, and because of the illegality in the UK, I obviously didn't want to lose those genetics. So I started, reversing plants, crossing them together, making seeds just for myself, just to sort of preserve my own genetics. And over time, I just started growing my own seed out, stopped growing other people's seeds, and then I'd over the years, I'd always liked the idea of doing something with cannabis sort of professionally because it's about the only thing I'm good at in life. And it's one of those things like if you're good at singing or something like that, you always think, oh, I'd like to be a famous singer, but you don't ever really do anything about it. So, it was just kind of a dream. And then over probably about 3, 4 years ago, I decided that I might make a go of it and try and actually, put some of my genetics out there and try and sell them. And yeah, I spent about basically 3 years testing all my stuff quite extensively because I've had a lot of, I'm sure a lot of people have as well, like a lot of bad experiences with like other people's genetics. If you buy some bad weed from someone, that's crap for a couple of nights. But if you buy some bad seed, it takes you months to figure out that's bad, costs you a load of money, and then you're left with months worth of crap. And I wouldn't want to do that to anyone. So I spent 3 years basically testing all my stuff quite extensively. And in that 3 years, I tested about 16 different varieties, and I've only currently got two out at the moment. And that's because I'd much rather have like a more focused catalogue of sort of certified bangers, if you will, as opposed to a large collection of, crap things where only like two things are decent. So and the two varieties I've got, one's called Rubber Tree, and it's a cross of Old Drippy from Hoku Seeds, which is a Canadian seed company, with a very special phenotype of Buddha cheese. So you might have heard of Milo, who ran big Buddha seeds in the UK. I found like a very sort of grapefruity sativa sort of skunky phenotype in a pack of seeds of his a while back, and yeah, it's a cross of those two plants, and it's about a 9 to 10 week flower, and it produces really nice long spear-shaped flowers that smell very rubbery, very gassy, a bit grapefruity as well. And then the second variety I've got is called Grapefruit Funk, and that's again the same cheese plant crossed with a plant called Fat Yeti, and it's got a very like the grapefruit funk's got a very sort of what I describe as like a farmyard funk to it. It smells very skunky. It's very loud, very sort of GMO-y when it's flowering, and it's got a nice grapefruit taste to it as well. So yeah, that's sort of how I got started, and them are two varieties at the moment that have an offer.
Were the strains you were growing back in the early days when you first started smoking, like around 13, did they have names? And is any of that stuff still stuff that you would hang on to and work with, or did you later start growing stuff like the pheno of that UK cheese or Big Buddhist cheese, I should say? And then, how did you come into
So
maybe accessing some of these
So,
genetics as well?
so in the UK in the early noughties, so my understanding is in America, you guys had like brickweed and stuff like that, whereas in the UK, our equivalent of that was like what was called Moroccan hash. So it was like they call it soap bar down south, or we called it sput up in the north. And the weed though was very good. It was mainly like Dutch import. It was grown in the UK by like quite big, sophisticated Vietnamese gangs who kind of knew what they were doing. And all the seed you would get, or I would get, would be the occasional bag seed. So every now and again, you'd find one or two seeds in the flowers, and a lot of the actual varieties at the time, it was just sort of like Super Skunk and like Exodus cheese and things like that. They were sort of, and Blues was another big one as well, which is a like a fruity phenotype of skunk one, and so yeah, that was where initially I got like seed from at first. The first ever pack of seeds I bought was from a local tattoo shop. So in the UK, tattoo shops often double as head shops as well. And but this is back in the early noughties when it wasn't as easy to order things off the internet. And that was a Northern Lights, it was called. I didn't know back then that if you buy like something called Northern Lights, that it's not, Northern Lights was a cut, wasn't it? It wasn't necessarily something you could buy in seed form. I didn't know that back then. But in my collection now, though, I've got like what I call a UK skunk, and it's a cross of blues with some. I don't know what it's crossed with. I got a friend of mine years ago, and that's about 15 years old. So that's sort of one of the oldest things I work with at the moment. So yeah, so everything back in the day was just kind of skunk and cheese, and it was mainly bag seed that I would mess about with.
It's interesting because what you described in terms of the unregulated market grows is similar to what's kind of happening in the US currently. On the indoor side, it's typically Chinese or, whatever, but they have lots of different people that set up relatively sophisticated grow houses. And for a while, there was notoriously a strain called the Chinese Bubba. It was just like a platinum Bubba, and sometimes it's called platinum Bubba or just Bubba Kush, pre-98 Bubba. But yeah, they grew pretty much exclusively that at like large scale and knew how to make it yield pretty well. They weren't using like the most ethical grow techniques and pesticide usage and stuff like that. It was all for commercial crop, maximizing
Yeah.
yield and minimizing any headaches and things like that. And they were using effectively like slave labor because they had people that were owed them money, and like to be in the country they had to pay them back by living in this suburban house that they didn't own, but and they're like not even on the lease of, but they'd be sleeping in a sleeping bag and the whole rest of the house would just be like thousands of plants and heating, ventilation, cooling, all that stuff. So crazy to see it continue to be that way until we change the regulations. Like when we make it legal and then you can actually do it out under the sun. A lot of it becomes sun grown farms, like farm style. And then a lot of it becomes under greenhouses. And what little left is indoor is by the really, really crafty, passionate enthusiasts or the enterprising types that are just trying to invest into cannabis and like, indoor, same weather year round. So there's some consistency benefits there, obviously, as well. But and quality benefits, I think, are undeniable as well when you can control everything. So I'm curious, do you have any experience? Did you ever like guerrilla grow, or have you been strictly indoor in your time growing?
Um, So near where I live, when I was younger, there was a large, like, sort of wooded area, and there was a couple of times where me and my mates would like stick plants out there, and the best we ever got because it was in the northwest of England, so it's not like the climate's okay, but the problem is around September it just kind of rains, like, so everything was sort of mold out. It's kind of like trying to grow up in like Washington or something like that in America. It's very rainy, and the best we ever did, we had some I think it was like some super lemon haze or something like that. We found some seeds in some weed and we planted them on this like big bank near where a river was. And they did really well. And then we came back once after a big rainstorm and they disappeared because the river had like overflown and washed them away. So that was about that. It was mainly always indoor because the climate's not really the best in the UK.
No, don't wash away the plants.
Yeah.
Hey, you talked about MJ Coco. Nice to meet you, Boudica. Um, you talked about testing and doing a lot of sort of testing for 3 years, making sure that the strains are releasable. Can you talk about that process? Like, what are you looking for, and how do you test them? Are you doing different kinds of stress testing, or are you just growing
Yes.
out
So
successive generations? So, can you
So
talk
what I
on
would
that?
do, yeah, so I would plant about 200 seeds in like cell trays, and I'd grow them out just under LEDs for 2 weeks. And then from that, I'd pick the 128 best, like basically the most vigorous ones, and I would transplant them into 1.5 liter containers. So this is like half a gallon, like these are really small containers. And then I'd basically put 32 plants under like one 600-watt light. So under four 600 watts, I'd have basically 128 plants and they'd all be deliberately crowded together. I would flip them straight away. So after 2 weeks of veg, I'd just flip them straight away. And I'd keep the temperature in the test chamber really high, like in like the low 30s, mid 30s. I'd keep it really dry during the day. I'd let it get really cool at night and really damp at night as well. I'd basically just do everything I can to like abuse the plants as much as possible. And then and basically, what I'm looking for is nothing can hurt me, like nothing at all. Like, because if you root bound things, if you crowd things together, if you keep it hot and big temperature swings, that tends to be one of the big triggers for like hermaphrodism. So, it's a great way to try and expose genetics that have this sort of tendency. And so I'm looking for it can't hurt me on me. And also a big thing for me is as well is consistency with taste. Like, I test a lot of stuff out and like I'd have
Sure.
128 specimens, and let's say 40% of them would be fire, but then 60% of them are just sort of meh. And if you're releasing, packs of fives to people, and only 40% of them are good, most people aren't going to get a great experience. So a big thing that I'm looking for is even when growing in less than ideal circumstances, because that's another thing as well. A lot of growers aren't necessarily going to always grow them the best. So you need them to be sort of bulletproof, but is that the consistent on taste? Most plants have got to sort of taste and behave the way I've sort of advertised, because there's nothing worse
Yeah.
than buying something and thinking you're getting, I don't know, some cheese or something like that, and then you get just, a bunch of hay or whatever. Like,
It's like
so,
100+ days, right? Like let's say you veg 30 or whatever, and then flower
No,
for
he's
60.
vegging 2 weeks. So
Yeah.
vegging 14. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, and then plus 9 weeks of flower. So you're at like 10, 11 weeks of investment, several months before you find out. And then you have to dry, cure, and smoke test it
yeah.
all, and then realize like, oh man, some of it's just boofy, garbage, mid, bunk.
Yeah,
But the best
you
stuff
get
does
this
stand out.
yeah, you get this a lot though, where you'll cross two amazing plants together, and within that
Yeah.
cross, you'll find amazing plants, but most of them won't be amazing. Most of them will be
Right.
like watered down versions of the parents, and you can
Right.
line
So how do you
breed
know which
that.
seeds are which, right? Because even going to like the next generation doesn't clean that up.
Yeah, if you heavily line breed it, like I've got some cheeses that have line bred. If you just pick the two tastiest ones and keep doing it, you'll eventually get the ratio of tasty plants versus not tasty plants sort of higher. But yeah, so
Yep.
a big thing for me is just that consistency. Like, because again, people are going to grow, like, even when you sell packs of five, most people don't plant all five. They plant like two of them, you know. So
Mm.
you've got two chances basically to prove yourself to them. So your best.
Right. They might just plant one to start.
Yeah,
And if it's not, as you say, a banger, then they may
yeah.
just move on, right? And not have a good experience. I'm curious, going back to the tests, do you do anything with light levels or light stress? And do you know how much light you provide to the plants?
Yeah, so I measure my PPFD and all that sort of stuff.
Okay.
In terms of light stress, one of the things I like to do is I like to start them out veg them under LEDs, and then I swap them in flower to HPS, because that transition I find kind of stresses them out a little bit. They don't really like going from one type of light into the other. In terms of sort of, I don't really try and stress them really with light. Like I give them a
What are
decent
your
amount.
PPFD levels? Yeah,
Oh,
under
so I
the
st so I start off at 1,000 at canopy at the start of flower. Like I like to give them a lot of light early on,
with the
and then
HPS.
yeah, with the HPS,
Are you
What
and
are
supplementing
then
you
the
with the
CO2?
LED during veg?
LED. I do the same with LED in veg. It's probably about 400, 500, something like that.
Okay.
But I
And
don't.
then
I'm
you
not as
bump them
strict
to
with that.
500, 1,000 HPS during
Yeah, and
flower.
then I let it go at most to about 1,200, like, and that's at absolute most, and that's normally when I'm being a bit lazy, to be honest with you,
Any
and not
supplemental
moving.
carbon
You
dioxide?
have to
Yeah,
be. Are you
Spartan
adding
asked that
CO2?
too, CO2.
No, I don't supplement with CO2, but where my stuff is, there's a lot of people in the house, so
Okay,
you know,
okay.
Human
it's
Within the
getting
supplemented.
basement?
yeah, it's getting human supplemented. But then from about week four, though, week five of flower, like I really dropped the PPFD down to about 800, and I don't let it go above that, because I find if you run it too high near the end, everything just sort of, you just get deficiencies all around, and it doesn't come out as good, in my opinion.
Okay, so that brings me to my next question. What's your grow medium and style of fertilization?
So I use BioBiz All Mix as my medium, and I use that on everything like seedlings. I just use that one mix. And then I used to use their nutrients, but I swapped to Canaterra, which is what I use now.
So you fertigate, are you providing nutrients in all the irrigation water?
Yeah, yeah. I feed all the way till the last week.
I just have
And
one
you're
note
still
because
finding deficiency issues late in veg or late in flower with
No, no,
high
I don't. I don't.
PBFD?
It depends. I found that if I just spaff a ton of light on my plants in that last few weeks, I don't get as good as results as if I lower it down a bit. And my understanding is that the light is the food. So if you increase the light, you increase the metabolic rate of the plant, which in turn increases its nutrient demands, etc., etc. And that's why you often end up in my experience, running into issues. So
I
I
think the
tend to keep
CO2
my
could be the factor.
I will say that, but
yeah.
like the growers I work with would never want to lower their PPFD because the amount of light you deliver to the plant ultimately determines the amount of yield that you can get from the grow. So they wouldn't, I mean, that would be a form of stress testing of your gear of the genetics, I guess, would be keeping a higher PPFD throughout flower.
Yeah.
I
I was
think
gonna say
Well, I
they would
do.
rather just
There
have them
would
be
be an
stressed and push the 1,000 or 1,200 or 1,500 because they're going to be
yeah.
supplementing CO2 and they'll be a little yellow and a little fucked up. But by the time it's trimmed and all said and done, they're happy because they got a bigger number on the scale, which
It
is
might
what
be a
keeps their
CO2
lights
thing.
on.
and there may
Yeah,
be
it
an
would be
argument.
interesting to know what the actual ppms are of CO2. That would be like, I don't know if you know that, but if you didn't, that
No,
would be
I don't
another,
actually. I don't actually measure my
The
CO2.
heat
yeah,
alone
that would
can
be
do it
another
too.
interesting data point.
He was saying 31 to, like low 30s
Low
to
to
mid
mid
30s, which
30s.
means that's 31 is 87 Fahrenheit for the American listeners, and 36 is 96 Fahrenheit. So if you got up to 36, you're pushing real hot. The plants are a lot happier. I mean, below 31, but 31 I think is like the high end of like okay with CO2. Not great, but it's like you're not panicked as much as 36, aka 96. But
That's a good
ideally, I
point,
think
Jack.
82
I bet a
would
lot of
be.
that late flower stuff is kind of directly tied to that temperature.
If you could cool it a little bit, that would make a great deal of difference in how much they would allow the whole Liebig's law of minimum thing. So like when you balance it out, they're going to be able to take that 1,000 basically all the way to the end, as long as something else isn't lacking. And like he's saying, if you're supplying nutrient each time, the nutrient's not the limiting factor. Something else is. So CO2 or the environmental, like if the humidity isn't necessarily dialed or if it's too hot. I've even seen when it was too cold, like when people were in their low 70s, thought they were doing like great because like a lot of HPS growers told them like keep it in the low 70s, mid 70s. And then I had them bump it up to like high 70s, low 80s. Their plants just greened up and yielded better, smelled better. Everything was better, stickier,
Yeah.
frostier. I mean, across the board. So,
I want to say that
um,
just to respond to some of the people in the chat, like in this context, I think yield and quality are correlated. We're not compromising quality to get yield. We're trying to grow healthy, wet-fed, well-cared for plants that are sort of like prime athletes that are doing great yield and great quality. So not reducing light isn't just about yield. It's also about
You would explore if you're trying to do that. Oh, I scared Jack away with that. Sorry, Jack.
you're so profound, Spartan. You like, wow, nobody can follow that. I get caught up reading the chat sometimes, and I just want to I should just respond to the chat probably in the chat.
Yeah, Jack's got connection issues right now.
Oh no,
Yeah, I just
is
got
might
booted
be
out as
back. I
well.
felt like I was cutting in and out there for a second, but yeah, I think I'm back. I think we're good.
Yeah,
gotcha.
everything just froze for me and I got booted out.
Well,
The
you're
same thing
back.
happened to me, weirdly. How bizarre. Zoom didn't want us to handle Spartan Grown's knowledge.
I'm sorry, I'll
So,
shut up.
Boudica, how many of your strains come across have you had issues with herming or things like that? How often do you have to like sort of eliminate?
Um, Well, recently I just tested that cheese plant that I told you about, crossed with a
Yeah,
garlic butter from Humboldt Seeds, and I found quite a few herms in that cross, so I'm not releasing that one. And I've noticed that garlic butter I've got, I've noticed it, like, I've not released anything from that because so far everything I've found herm issues with, even though the plant itself doesn't herm. So it's not something I get too often, but it still shows up every now and again. Like I don't
You
keep
said like
plants,
you
and I
tried like
don't bring.
13 or 15 strains and you kept two. So I mean that presumably
Yeah.
there was something that you didn't like. Either the flavor was off, the yield was off, the Hermy issue was there
Yeah,
for the
yeah,
other 11 or so, which shows that at least you have I prefer to see this, that at least you're trying to discriminate and you're not just accepting everything. You are saying like I
yeah.
yeah,
don't like certain stuff for these negative qualities. I'm not going to accept slow growers or poor yielders or stuff that smells and tastes awful or whatever. I'm going for like the killer of the killer and the stuff that's going to be the most consistent within that.
Yeah, yeah. For me, I did have a couple of lines where they had hernia issues, but the main problem I had was just the taste wasn't as uniform as I would like. So the two that I eventually put out, I picked them because A, they didn't hurt me, they had great taste, and it was like nice and consistent. So
yeah,
I had a question in
yeah.
regards to like you were talking about earlier with your backyard or outdoor grows. A lot of people in the UK kind of lean towards even like balcony grows with like auto flowers or fast flowering stuff that would finish
Yeah.
maybe in or before September, or even mold resistant stuff. Like maybe you just pick season after season for something that can handle a little bit of rain. Like I know me and Gene from Mendocino, they get rain up there, and like he always posts a meme pretty late in like usually October for us. Croptober is around then, and like early October they'll get a huge rain, and he posts like the some movie where the guy's holding an axe with like a crazy look on his eye, and he's like people going to panic chop at the first sign of rain or whatever. And so it was just him describing like a lot of people in his area cutting stuff down because they're worried about the molds and the mildews and the issues that do come along with it. But some plants are hardier, and some people are more willing to risk it. Maybe they know their genetics better. Maybe their soil microbiome is stronger. Because I've seen in the same greenhouse, they had like one plant was covered in PM, the other one, same strain actually, was not covered in PM, and the one that had PM fell over on top of the other one, and the other one had not a speck on it. And they looked at the soil, and the soil biome was really healthy on the one, and the other one was really fucked up. So like a dripper wasn't going to the one that got the PM, so it actually like starved it of water first, and then that one made it susceptible to the powdery mildew or something like that. And then the other one was getting exactly what it needed, so it was perfectly healthy and was able to resist even a fully covered PM plant laying on top of it. And same strain, which is the most bizarre thing of it all. So soil microbiome could be a big part of it, but yeah, finding general resistances and going back to the general question, autoflower and fast flowering. Have you ever thought about that or played around with that at all so far?
So I've grown some autoflowers back in the day, but I don't really breed with them, to be honest with you. You can't keep mums, can you, easily? You've got to, like, I think people who breed autoflowers and do a good job of it are very talented breeders because it's a lot more difficult to do and you need a lot more space.
And a
Yeah.
good eye and a good nose and a good head for getting stoned off of all the different stuff that you're selecting from, because they have to select generation after generation, and they can keep seed stock from past stuff and then back cross into it or whatever. But not being
Right.
able to keep mothers makes things, I would not say infinitely harder, but a significant amount harder in some regards. But then they'll say like they're doing like 5 or 6 crops a year, and a lot of the time that's like 4, 5, 6 F generations in that year, if that's how they do it, if they're doing indoor crops, right? And just turning and burning, they can go through like I think like Anvil F6 from Mandalorian, or not Mandalorian, gosh, what is it called now? Full
No,
duplex,
gnome on my
Gnome
automatic.
Automatics.
No.
Yep.
Throwing out all the names. He's been around since like 2010, and he really, I think, has been one of the people who took it from like lowrider, like unsmokable garbage to like smokable stuff that like looks, smells, and tastes good, which I think is cool to see. I'm not an autoflower guy myself. I've actually never grown them,
Oh.
but I have friends who've grown some really good ones and gifted them to me, and I've actually seen them in the
Ever
commercial
grown
market.
autoflowers, Jack?
Not at
I don't
once.
want to tangent too much with the autoflowers, but I do want to give him the full respect, and I want to say I think his important contribution was just connecting the community together for a place to kind of gather with his online autoflower.com thing that he
The
did.
Autoflower Network, I think.
When, yeah, or Autoflower Network, yeah, because that's when it wasn't popular and everybody was shitting on him because they weren't that great at the time. And he's just like, nah, let's just make a network for everybody to gather. And
Yeah.
they pooled their knowledge, and then it just started. It seems like it just fucking improved quickly because you have to. Like Boudica was saying, it's like you're under the gun. You can never quit because you're not gonna be able to keep clones, and you just got to go generation after generation after generation. Maybe map out a plan before you even get started because you don't have time to even think.
I will say, lucky for them, it couldn't get any worse. The lowrider is some of the worst shit I've ever smoked ever. Grown by an experienced grower. It looked beautiful. It was purple. It was frosty as hell. No terps, no high. It was like honestly the closest thing I've smoked to like actual hemp. It was so bad. Like I've never wanted to not smoke something again, other than like really shitty commercial stuff or like close to Mexican brickweed style. But yeah, the yeah, not a big fan of the
Yeah, the
lowrider in
autos
that
I breed
era.
weren't good. Yeah, they weren't good either. They were like sort of hemp weed as well. This was like 2008
Ruderalis,
or something.
anything like Ruderalis adjacent that was like super close to the natural ditchweed, that stuff is like not fun to smoke, in my opinion. It might be decent for some medicinal extractions or salves or something, but yeah, if you're
Let's
used
be
to the stuff
fair.
that we
Let's be
smoke,
fair.
especially,
There's another point though. Let's be fair. That is basically, I think, what we could call a landrace for for the autoflower, you know. And it just
Lowrider.
illustrates what I say, which is not a very popular opinion, but I just still say it because it's the fucking truth. Everybody fucking runs and runs when they hear I got this fucking landrace from whatever exotic location you can think of on the globe. It doesn't matter. If it said Antarctica, I would just laugh, but any other place, I got whatever landrace. Yeah, but if it's a true landrace, it's gonna be like lowrider. It's gonna be like something you wouldn't want to fucking smoke. It's something that
I
breathes
man,
like
we may be
hot.
using these terms differently, Spartan, but like land races are like traditional varieties that have been cultivated by usually indigenous populations in different parts of the world. And but they're selected through millennia for things. They're different than wild plants. Wild plants, and I actually think that lowrider was more of a wild plant than it was a land race per se. I agree with you about sort of wild hemp and cannabis, but that's different than like the Highland Thai varieties or whatever that are, or like even the
Durban.
Central American varieties that are land races that are sort of endemic to those areas that have been grown there. Farmers collect seeds and replant those seeds, and they become sort of localized varieties.
Like sour diesel in Northern California, or Humboldt varieties
But
that
that's a
over the
modern
years.
variety. So that's made by people like Boudica that are sort of intentionally doing breeding practices to do intentional crosses and other things like that. They're not just sort of generations of farmers passing down their seed stock.
And don't hate on Antarctica, Spartan, because he said earlier he was had some fat Yeti in one of his crosses, and I have platinum Yeti in 50 strains of purple. So look out for those Yeti
Your buddy in
strains
Antarctica
coming
said
out of
that.
Antarctica.
I want to get back to Boudica. Do you do feminized breeding or are you using males?
Feminized. I've messed with males a little bit back in the day, but I just do fem breeding.
So all your crosses, but you're crossing them or you're selfing them after that?
I cross
You're
them. I do self plants for like preservation purposes. So if I was going to cross one plant with another plant, I would put a copy of itself in there just so I've got some S1s of it. Just, you never know if your dog gets booted in. You'll be happy of,
yeah.
if you lose the original mums, it's better to have some S1s than nothing. But no, I don't breed with S1s or anything like that.
I would argue it's better for strict genetic preservation, but an S1 is not the same as the parent, and
No, no, they
I
don't come out
don't.
as good.
They're just not the same because of
No.
genetic recombination. To the extent that the parent is heterozygotic, the offspring aren't going to have the same constellation of traits that the parent has because of recombination. So,
Spartan, didn't you
they
guys grow side by side the Mac 1 S1 and Mac 1 cut
Yeah,
NC,
yeah.
like in the same greenhouse or same grow room,
It was
and
in a
get to actually like
greenhouse.
see it for yourself firsthand? Like it's not, the
not the
S1,
same. They'll
and
have
most
some of the
people.
similar traits.
I say it
It's just
wasn't
like if
even.
you were able to produce a child just by yourself, like you separate your genes and then you recombine them, and they match up a little bit differently. That's the same ingredients, so it's not like radically different, but it's not going to be the same quality.
I've heard
Yeah,
about
also my
10%.
understand.
Only 10% of them even are similar to the mom that it came from. So like you're hunting through, like 90% of them are going to be like the genetics from the grandparent generations and the other crosses that are in there and just random stuff that it can produce. And then you get like 10% that are like 1 out of 10 of them are going to be like mom and maybe not even as good. So you're going to have like the cut that's better than this pheno that you popped and hunted to find mediocrity in some sort.
Yeah, S1s they always come out watered down. A lot of that is because the parents that you're using are all polyhybridized F1s basically. Like most people aren't breeding with like true stable genetics. Like if it was truly stable, you probably would end up with quite uniform plants, but because everything's so
Yes,
hybridized,
I'm so
it's
glad
never
you
going to
brought
come
this
out the
up.
same.
Have you ever gone down that alley of doing inbreeding to create stable parent lines?
Sort of, yeah. So I've got a few crosses of various Buddha cheese plants that I've crossed together, and I've only really gotten up to about F4, so that's about as deep as I've gone so far.
F
Which
or S?
F
Okay,
F
to
for
do what I'm talking
farm.
about, you is the one use that I would really applaud breeders to do for selfing, but it's to inbreed to itself. So to self a plant in corn, we have to do it 7 generations. So an S7 corn breeding is all done with S7s or greater. Like the parents are all S7s, S8s. that are crossed with other S7s or S8s, these ridiculously inbred lines. And they're inbred so much to create genetic homogeneity, so that when you cross these two genetically homogeneous plants, they create purely heterozygotic offspring that are identical. That's how all modern corn plants planted from seed are genetically and phenotypically identical. It's because of that inbred hybrid breeding that creates really what most people in the industry call true F1 seeds. And they have heterosis because of that hybridization. It's the big challenge is most plants can't be selfed that much, which speaks to our earlier point that S1s aren't as good as the parents, because it's like a copy of a copy of a copy of a copy. And if you're as old as me, you can remember the old Xerox machines that when you copied something 4 or 5 times, you could barely read that thing
Got so
anymore.
blurry.
Yeah, and that's what you're dealing with the essing, right, with
Well,
the
in cannabis,
selfing.
infertility. Breeder Steve was saying, and many others. I think it was
Yeah.
CSI Humboldt or somebody else who was doing S1s, started doing S2s and S3s, trying to play around for stability reasons, found huge infertility reasons after
It's
S2,
hard.
S3 in modern
The
cannabis.
same
And
thing is true in corn and other cultivars, though. You just have to keep trying. Like you have to then
I think
all
only
of these
commercial,
S4s died. You got to start over with a new P and self it and then go down that road again.
the
And
problem is for us, I think it's
yeah,
only going to be available to commercial, huge, like multi-million, maybe billion-dollar operations because we don't, one, know what genetics to test for. We probably can't afford to test for those genetics.
you
And then
don't
like
really
even
need,
if we
you just need to
do,
get through the 7 generations. You get through the 7 generations. If you have a viable plant at that point, then you cross it with another plant that's gotten through the. So you need to do it twice. You cross those two and then hope for the best. But what you can guarantee is every time you cross those two, all the seeds will be identical. And if
and
they're
super
awesome,
vigorous and amazing. If
they'll
yeah,
be super vigorous and amazing. They might not have the right terpene traits or the right cannabinoid traits. Like you need to kind of still get lucky. But yeah, it would be just a
even
really
grapes are like
radically
that.
different
That whole
approach.
cotton candy grape, they just did like princess cross to, whatever Alabama variety. And then they tested like thousands of them and found one that tasted really sweet, like almost exactly like a cotton candy. So they have these cotton candy grapes now that are like, I think people got really jaded because the whole like grapple back in the day, like apples that were soaked in like grape juice and sold as like a hybrid, but it wasn't really a hybrid. But then eventually, like real stuff like apriums and pluouts and all that have, been introduced to the market where real hybrid fruits are available. And I just think it's fantastic to see these things coming to reality and being bred without, in that case, it wasn't even like a GMO hybrid. It was just a selective
Yeah,
breeding. They did a big cross, just like
this is
Luther
selective
Burbank
breeding
with
that's been
the russet
done.
potato.
Yeah, back to the 19th century, they've been doing this. Really caught on in commercial markets in corn in like the 19 teens and 20s, and then just dominates now. And most of the large commercial grain seeds are all bred that way. I
Well, and it
think
could take
cannabis has
forever
the
because like
potential for it, but yeah, it would take a lot of research effort. So I'm still looking for somebody that's willing to do it.
and is a passionate nut. We need a Luther Burbank who's willing to take 17 years to make a Shasta daisy out of 4 different daisies because he's just nuts and like he just wanted to make something new to be awesome. Like initially he got kind of lucky, I think, with like a potato that he started in Mass, moved to California. Fascinating individual, but I think we should all sort of be inspired by his maybe dumb luck in the beginning and then his passion towards the rest of his life. He just bred the spineless cacti and so many different really cool things. Like they still have his farm in Sebastopol, California, and you can go check out a lot of the stuff is still alive on his farm. And he had some not so great things about him as well, but that era of history is not perfect. So I like to focus on the positive, and it's cool that we can, in our own way, do that with cannabis. Like we're on the cutting edge, we're on the frontier, we're the people that there hasn't been an established corn market. No one gives a shit about corn seed, right? Because like you can buy it if you want to grow it for a commercial reason. You
Right.
can buy it if you want to grow it at home, but that's usually heirloom, like blue stuff or multicolored corn. But it's not like we're paying $100 for a pack of seeds for the most part. Like people are getting it for cheap, almost cost. With cannabis, we're probably in like one of the golden eras of seed where it's still sort of this like Wild West piratey sort of market where like there are some people doing like shady, scandalous shit, but like the people that do the hard work, which is extremely difficult because the resources are so limited, the genetics are so not stable. It's like there's really an art still left in it, and I think there's a lot of passion that can like people like Boudica and others can nail down really interesting things through back crossing or whatever techniques that we have available to us. And like even going back to like the forum era or DJ Short or I talked about him last week, uh, Mr. Soul from Brothers Grimm, and like the way that they back crossed to make the Cinderella 99. And even like going to the Larry OG F8 talking about the Donnie Burger and Han Solo Burger last week with Skunk House Genetics. Like there are people doing, I think, interesting stuff. Brandon was talking about a lot of the stuff he was isolating. Boudica is doing, I think, a good job with back crossing some of the cheeses. But as things become more and more legal and more access is granted, hopefully we all have access to like cheap and widely available genetic testing so we can know like, oh, this one's going to have this terpene profile before you even grow it out. You'll know from a seedling. You can do that now. It just costs so much money and it's like really inaccessible. But like SC Labs has genetics testing for like 58 different terpenes or something. So they can tell you, hey, this seedling is going to be high in alpha pinene. This one's going to be high in terpinolene or whatever it is. So by the time it's an inch tall, you can already call half of them because you're like, okay, I don't want that high myrcene one. I'm looking for alpha pinene, terpinolene, osamine, blah, blah, blah. But speaking of breeding and breeders and people that are doing awesome shit, and he's actually got some cheese crosses. I want to welcome in the American one. Hopefully he got the mute button defeated. Cheers, Tal. Welcome.
What's up, Jack? Dr. MJ, Spartan, and Boudica Seeds. What's up, everybody? I'm the American One on the YouTube and the American One underscore with underscore Keens on the IG. I'm glad I made it. Good to see everyone. And yeah, I'm glad to be here.
Glad to have you. It's funny because you guys both actually have a fair amount of cheese in your work. I know that your Amy Aces is RB proprietary crossed to Cheesequake,
Yep.
and you've got Cheesequake crossed into some of the blueberry stuff you got from AK Bean Brains as well. I don't know if you have any other varieties going on over there, Tal, but maybe you could tell us a little bit about your cheese work and what drew you to it, because it seems like both of you guys have that shared passion for a good cheese on this panel.
Well, you must have good taste for sure.
His
yeah,
admittedly was like a grapefruit pheno, I think he was specifying. So
okay, well, teach their own. But yeah, I like that cheesy funk. And coming up, like when I would get weed from people, like someone said it was a UK cheese, right? So I bought the bag and I found some seeds in it and I grew it out and it was some of the best weed that I ever, had at the time anyway. And yeah, anytime I got a sample of weed that supposedly was the cheese or was a cross, I loved it. So when I ended up wanting to make seeds, I'm like, I'm going to use this cheesequake because it has the UK cheese in it. And yeah, so that's what I did. And that cheesequake male was great. Unfortunately, he lives no more, but I have plenty of seeds with many different ladies. So yeah, and yeah, a couple of them definitely come out super duper cheesy funk, and I think it's a great. I love that shit. So
I'm glad that you enjoy it. It's interesting that you kind of touched on something that I think a lot of us experience. For me, it was like blue strains, blueberry, blue dream, blue whatever, or Jack strains, Jack Herrera, J1, a lot of the Jack crosses, Durban, things like that. These similar profiles, like I feel like the nose knows, so to speak, like your nose knows what you want and what you need, your, endocannabinoid system, your profile, what you might like, might gravitate towards, might smell good to you. It isn't always going to be that way. I think some of the GMO that is good medicine for me. I'm not the biggest fan of how it smells, but it's just amazing the high that it creates when I consume it. But I do think that there's a big part of like when people go to breed, they were going to breed with the stuff that they enjoy the smell and the taste and things like that. So it's interesting that you guys both gravitated towards that because as we talked, maybe it was last week or the week before, I was listing off like 17 different like fruit profiles in cannabis, and that's just fruit. Like there's like gas and earth and skunk and so many different facets of it. There's hundreds, maybe thousands of different phytochemical chemicals and aromatic things that can make cannabis special. And to have multiple people on the same panel drawn to a similar kind of historical strain, I think is a notable thing. So kind of fun to see that crossover there. What was it, Boudica, that you said yours was more of a grapefruit pheno, but does it have any cheese? And having grown up around the cheese, are you maybe like some people here in California that Blue Dream got so big, they're like, oh, fuck Blue Dream, it sucks because it just got so popular. Like I know a lot of people there didn't like hazes because hazes were really big and popular as well. So they kind of got like washed out of just like you have it all the time, it becomes common. And then when it's so common, it almost becomes unappreciated.
So that sort of happened in the UK a little bit, but good cheese has sort of died off now. It's all sort of diet cheese. Like you don't get a lot of good stuff anymore. I've got quite a few mother plants that have got various different cheeses that are pretty decent. So, I hold on to them because that's, one of my personal favorite turp profiles. So no, I've not gotten sick of it. I still love it.
How long are you able to keep your mother plants?
The oldest one I've got, do you mean just as one plant or do you mean just the genetic?
Yeah, as one plant. Yeah, serial cloning is a different thing. So is that what you're
Um,
doing? You're just eventually cloning off of it and taking a
yeah,
new,
I don't keep, so I
putting
don't
out a
keep my
new.
mum plants for too long. I keep them for like a month or two at most. Like I keep
Okay.
them small. I just take like 4 clones of each, get one or two to root, grow them out a little bit, and then replace the other one with that. I find it's
Okay.
better because if you grow them out too big, I find they get a bit unhealthy after a while, and it becomes harder to get those cuts to root.
Yeah. No, that's true. But in production, I usually set up moms to go 9 months. So more than
Yeah,
1 or 2 months, but then you have to clone off of them and do them again. And I'll also say that we only do that probably 4 or 5 times between we try to source new genetics because things change through that serial cloning too.
yeah. So the oldest plant I've got is 15 years old. And I've got
Wow.
other ones that are about a decade old. I've got some cheese that's about a decade old. And I've personally not noticed any real sort of genetic drift or anything like that. I'm not saying it doesn't happen, but everything still sort of tastes the same to me. Everything, nothing's really changed. The only
I
thing
feel
I
like
have
it's good
noticed
until
though,
it's not, unless it gets like a virus or a viroid
yeah,
or something goes really wrong. It
yeah,
might get slightly worse. Like I have the GG4 and the Death Star, and they're still amazing. And GG4 is from like the mid 2000s, making it a decade and a half old, at least 15 plus years.
yeah.
So I didn't keep it the whole time. I got it from somebody who kept it well and tissue cultured it and did clean it up. But
Keeping them
it
healthy
grows
the
just
whole
like brand
time.
new.
Yeah. And doing
Yeah, and
tissue
in
culture helps.
Yeah, and in the UK, because everything's illegal, basically, people don't really share cuts. So everything's, it's much harder for like viruses and stuff like that to sort of spread around amongst people's grows for the most part. So
That's a
yeah, maybe
benefit.
that's some,
One of
yeah,
the few
maybe that's got,
benefits.
yeah, it is actually, yeah. So maybe that's one of the reasons why I've not noticed any sort of genetic drift or anything like that, because you've stayed healthy.
Keeping
Hate
it
to be
tight
a
and clean.
stickler, that's not really the right term, but that's I mean, it's
Somoclonal variation, right? Or
yeah,
Yeah, yeah, whatever
sure,
people
clonal
call it, yeah,
variation.
because whatever people, because I've heard people say this that if you keep recloning a clone for too long, it changes, and I'm not saying that
It
can't happen, but I've
is.
just personally not noticed it.
It's just that the term genetic drift means something distinct in population genetics. It refers to like a change in the whole gene pool through time,
Yeah,
not
I
in
feel
like
like it's
one
more,
individual. Yeah.
and I don't know if plants have this, but I know humans have what's called epigenetics. So you have your genetics and your epigenetics. So like your current lifetime, what you do can impact what your baseline is essentially. So
Sort of. Yeah. Epigenetics really refers to like how the genes are read. So, like, why your skin cells read the skin cell chapter and why your brain cells read the brain cell chapter is explained by epigenetics. It's one of the sort of frontier disciplines in biology. And we've really only started to really understand it in like the last quarter century.
I might have
Um,
been using the wrong term, but I know that there's like certain things that can switch
that
on
is
and
what they
off, like
call it because that's
ApoE4
basically,
factor. If you smoke cigarettes and you have the ApoE4 allele, you're like
yeah.
80% more likely to get breast cancer if you're a female or something like that. And so we do have certain things. And with like plants, I almost feel like I remember there was a situation where the guy from Swiss X CBD exposed his plants to mutagenic breeding. I can't remember exactly what it was, but I think he used radiation to expose a bunch of plants because he was trying to grow hemp on the equator. So he wanted to make a plant mutagenically with breeding through some radiation exposure that was able to grow 0.000 THC even on the equator when it was super hot. Because normally when you get that close to the equator, hemp will test over zero point 0.3. It might not be 30%, but it might be like 1, 2, 4, 5. whatever percent that's not legal in the territory anymore. So either you have to cut it super early, or you have to grow a different variety that can somehow manage to not pop hot. And so the way that they did it was mutagenic breeding. But it makes me feel like what you're saying, Doc, is potentially true. Like if you clone after a clone after a clone, and like let's say in my garden I fuck it up generation after generation after generation, but in your garden you're crushing it generation after generation after generation. 10
It's how
generations down
healthy
the
and
line,
stressed the plants
yours is
get.
going to be way healthier and happier than mine's going to be. And like if you pass it off to the next guy, your 11th generation GG4 versus my 11th
Yep.
generation GG4 is going to be
Yep.
two different plants. But I think that there's some amount of like that baseline genetic. If you do tissue culture it, you can like bring it back some bit, but like some of it has changed. I don't know. I think what Boudica is saying is he's not noticing a flavor difference. And I've heard the same from like people who had the cat piss cut for a long time. And then they said one day, all of a sudden, I think this is before they knew about viroids, viruses, all this. They said it just lost that smell. It lost the cat piss smell. It lost the gas leak smell. It lost all of the special character to it. And so they just cut it because there was other stuff around, OG, purple, blah, blah, blah. And so
Just
they
as
moved
you
on to the
can
next.
stress a plant during its lifetime, and then it won't be as good, even if you kind of recover the plant. That's basically what happens with what we're calling epigenetic drift in clones. As Rocinante said, it's a transcription error. It happens more when plants are under a lot of stress, and that becomes part of the way that those cells are reading that DNA, and they're not as good then. So that sort of degradation gets passed down through cloning. Um, Basically the same material, the same sort of historical injury, almost, you can think about it. And when you're growing plants for production versus for genetic preservation, you generally put them under much more stress. Like we grow mothers at reasonable PPFD, trying to grow them pretty quick under high frequency fertigation to get, so we can cut off 200 clones in a week. If you're growing it for genetic preservation, you're growing it at a lower PPFD, you're growing it at, in lower fertilization rates, sort of expecting slower growth, keeping a plant kind of in a happier, more comfortable zone, and there will be less damage done to that plant then.
That's
So,
kind of how I run it.
yeah, yeah. So if you're keeping a mom, it depends on what you're keeping a mom for. I think most home growers are thinking like, I'm going to cut off like a couple of clones every few months. That's a radically different scenario than we're cutting off like 200 clones every 2 weeks. And in terms of how much stress you're putting on those moms and how long you're going to end up sort of keeping those moms before they become too degraded to just do that linear clone or serial cloning. So I
That's a
think that
great
that is a
point.
good point. Yeah.
I will say, despite like the terminology, epigenetic drift, somoclonal variation, whatever we want to call it, transcription errors, etc., the good ones shine. The GG4 is good, even grown by the worst of grower in the worst of conditions. Like it still has a good smell. It still turns out a yield. It might not be as good as the guy who does a 10 out of 10, but they can hit that 7 or 8 out of 10, even when their grow is probably a 4, 5, 6 out of 10 or something like that, just because that genetic is so strong, hardy, and just turns out no matter what. Like the Velvet Punch, the only reason I released it, I didn't create it. It was from my buddy Vegan Doja. I grew the F1s, really liked it. They were super stable, grew amazingly. I F2'd it, shared the F2s just with friends to test. Friends, aka anybody who reached out to me onto this podcast. And same thing with the F3s. And after the testing was done, people had really good results in the F3. And I was like, you know what? I stress tested the shit out of it. I grew it grow after grow after grow, like super hot, super cold, major temperature swings, way too small of pots, and did the craziest things. And then had hundreds of different growers growing it and found it was very, very stable. The one thing that would cause it to be intersex was insane light leaks. Like the one guy had a situation where like half of his grow was in tents that would be open, and then the other half would be in tents that would be closed because like that open half for cooling them off would be in their dark period, and then the closed half would have their lights on. And he would go in there and flip flop them. And then he didn't end up flip flopping them one time. So they were basically just like getting hit by light from one of the other grows and for a couple of days. So like I think he said 4 out of 5 strains or something in that tent hermed, and like maybe one of them didn't. But in that situation, I think when you have major light leaks from like grow lights for multiple hours, I think you're going to be more likely to see
All bets are
intersex
off.
traits. That's like a little different than like your average home grower who might have it in too small of a pot, might overwater, might underwater, like all the stuff that I intentionally did. Kyle Breeder had a whole list of different things that he used to do to stress test plants, and I put the Velvet Punch through that grow after grow, like multiple grows, and then eventually I did like my 10 out of 10 grow where I didn't stress test them, and I was like, holy shit, you can really see they finished weeks sooner when you like did the proper grow, like literally weeks sooner, 2.5, maybe 3 weeks faster. And
Right.
that's like the 8 to 8.5 week front. I personally like them around 9, but if they get a little stressed, like 9.5, 10, and if they're really stressed, like they can go into that 10.5, 11, and maybe just keep droning on depending on how much you really fuck with them. But it goes to show that I think the good ones, even in the shittiest situations, like they weren't unsmokable. They still had some of that flavor, which was like desirable. They still had some frost. They still had some yield. And a lot of the other stuff that I'd grow in those situations, I just think doesn't necessarily hold up to that. And a lot of the people that I've gotten out to, I think Spartan Grown's growing them right now, actually. He's got the Velvet Punch F3 in his garden. Maybe we could get a little update. And then you could also, after you give us that update, read this question that you dropped into our little section from Rotten Skateboards 500 or 5090.
Okay. Right now I think we're around week 5, maybe 6. And man, I'm really liking this. There's I think 2 of the 5 are purple buds and the other ones are green. But one of the green ones has buds that don't look like any of the other buds. They're real tight. They don't have a ton of hairs. And it reminds me of, I can't remember what I've grown in the past that I've grown before. I've seen it before. But the smell that comes off of it and everything, I'm really liking that. So I'm liking the terp profile that's coming off of it. And I don't know, it's candy-like, like maybe grape. I don't know. It's along those, it's kicking around those edges. And but it's interesting. So I've been keeping my eye on that. And then there's one that smells similar but still different because it's got more gas to it, and that one is really the most purple of them too. So those are the two that I really keep my eye on. And we've only got them in like I think 2 gallon pots in cocoa, and they're about 3 foot tall plants. So not huge. We're trying to get as many plants in there as possible. We got some dragon, Bodhi's dragon blood hash plant also going in there at the same time. There's only a couple of
You guys
those.
got some bleeders too. I think I saw Emily
Yeah,
maybe posted like actual anthocyanin in the sap there going on.
yep, for sure. We got one of them that bleeds like that. One of I think we've got 2 or 3 of them in flower, but one of them bleeds, and we have another one in veg that we haven't gotten to flower yet, so that could possibly be one. But yeah, that was cool to see. It was wild because it does look exactly like blood if you know, you could be
Yeah, I
surprised.
have a plant
Yeah,
that does that.
yeah, it's wild. It's wild to see that. You feel sorry for trimming the plant at all, honestly, when you cut it and you see it do that.
Yeah, mine's a Thailand race. And when you cut the stems, it has like I've got pictures of it actually on my Instagram. It's got like bright pinky red sap.
Yep, yep. That's
I've cut myself trimming the leaves on occasion, so that would actually be a little spooky, like because I think it doesn't happen until a certain part into the grow. So like you cut one off and you're like, did I just clip my finger? Like especially if you're like gloved up or something, you have to like take the glove off, check yourself. It's like, oh no, that's just the anthocyanin or whatever from the phloem or whatever in the xylem, whatever it is. I don't even know, but it's interesting to see it for sure, and it can be a surprise. I think it's cool every time. Like
Well,
purples are just fun. It's
unless you're
phloem.
feeding it something purple in the thing. Phloem carries the photosynthate, it carries like the sugars from photosynthesis to the rest of the plant. The xylem carries water up the roots with nutrients to the leaves. So it's probably phloem that you're the sap from that. Mhm.
Fascinating for sure.
Yeah,
And
I've got it on my Instagram pulled up. Let me try to share it and we can
I
show
might have
everybody
to
if
do
they
the
haven't
multiple
seen it.
participants can share at once. I don't know if I've done that. Share settings.
Oh, it says not turned on
Uh,
right now.
okay.
I'll send a request. It gives me an option to send a request. I am requesting the
I
ability to.
allow it. I'll allow it.
I appreciate that. All right, so how do I do? Okay. It hasn't given me any options to do. Oh, maybe just try again. Share. Yep, yep, that's what you gotta do is just try again. Okay, let me know when you can see me on my Instagram page. because it's not showing me
We're
anything.
live
I
now.
can't.
All right,
Yes.
here it is.
Oh,
So you'll see when she makes this cut. Also, the plant was well watered. It wasn't like dried out or anything. So I think that has a lot to do with it. You see
Oh
it kind of
wow.
collected on the stem, and then she'll wipe it with her finger, and you look at it. It's like, wow.
wow.
Oh wow, it's very dark red.
This
Yeah,
strain is like notorious. It's literally called Dragon's Blood because of this.
I'll try to pause it after she
That's
wipes it on her
wild.
finger again. But yeah, it's like that makes you feel really bad about cutting the damn plant when you see that, you know?
Yeah, it really is
Oh, it
like blood.
anthropomorphizes it. Yeah. The plants are always bleeding and crying when you cut them, guys, not just when it's red. Like, empathize
Yep.
with plants.
It's
Yeah.
amazing. The red, there's no other purple, right? The plant is green. That's crazy.
It is
I
wild
had
looking.
one that did that. Yeah, it wasn't that red though. It was like a weird reddish color. I have pictures of that one, but that's awesome coloring, dude. But
Yeah.
like, yeah,
That
it's
was a
only in
great
this
video.
inside.
Shout out to Anything Grows. Emily, she did a great job documenting that.
It's such a that was a perfect way to demonstrate it too. Like you saw the plant, you saw her cut the leaf, and then like, oh, look at what I found, and then it's like, boom, like wow, that is really like the visceral effect that you get from and the beauty of it. It's so diverse, this plant.
Yeah, that was a
He
clone
straight
because she
executed
cut the
that plan
main.
as far as right. Didn't they cut the whole top of the plant off? I mean, there's like one little bud below the top where
Yeah,
she oh
that was a clone. So cut yeah.
yeah, right. But yeah, it was a
But yeah,
victim.
cut the main stalk. Yeah.
Right.
Made her bleed good.
That was an execution. The victim was bleeding afterwards. It was pretty brutal.
Well, she's flowering now in flower, so she did survive, we will say.
I've had a lot of good ones from the hash plant crosses. The one I didn't like was called More Cowbell. It was like a 88 G13 hash plant to forum cut Girl Scout cookies, and it was just like the most turpless thing ever. And I thought I really fucked it up because I was growing them in like 1 gallon pots to do little pheno hunts. And I think Velvet Punch in 1 gallon pots and above is gonna be fine. Like I fucked around with solo cups, so I think if you do it in a 1 gallon pot, you're gonna be golden, but or larger, I should say, but at least 1 gallon. And you said 2 gallon of cocoa. 2 gallons of cocoa is like that's a business. Like I've seen people get some big plants and solo cup grows with cocoa. So if you're in cocoa 2 gallon, that you're fucking cooking with some gas over there, like 3 footers. You know, you probably got a handful, probably, I don't know, six, seven, eight
Oh
colas
yeah.
at least. Nice fat ones on there, and then some peripherals. So I know how Spartan throws down. You guys do it right over there.
Yeah, we're using we got all those plants under a 2x4 spot. It's like split a 4x4 in half. So that's we got half of it is cocoa with synthetic nutrients, and then the other side is organic and SIFs. So that's
No
pretty
It's gonna
fun.
cool.
be cool to see.
Same
Fun
strains?
side by side.
Oh no, all different strains. We're
All
pheno
different.
hunting it with the cocoa, and we're just
Yeah,
running our own keeper strains, but in the organics.
gotcha.
It'll be nice though if any of those stand out. They get to maybe get a chance in the sips or whatever, and see if they can stand up to the keeper
Well,
strains.
I don't think there's much argument in the fact that it's just faster. It's just so much faster. It seems like a turnaround in synthetic than it is organic. I'm going to start a war. But
You can do organic like fairly fast and then keep it on a similar timeline, but that's like being a Brandon Rust level, like your soil testing, you're giving K humate, N humate, and
yeah,
all these
yeah.
different like chelated organics or whatever. With cocoa, even like a Joe average person who's got like less than a year of experience can crank out a grow like, a couple week veg, 60, 70 days of flower, and you're busting out like,
Especially if they follow good advice.
Yeah, and you can
yeah.
blast like 8, 12 plants, and I mean, depends on how much space you have. You can get
Cocoforcannabis.com, which I've recommended
yeah.
literally at this point hundreds of people to. Like, and or I'll just say like, what's your EC range? And then they'll tell me, oh, it's 3.6. I'm like, let's drop that down to like 1.5 to like 1.7, maybe even like 1.2 to 1.5, like depending on where you're at. And then just keep it there. And then like water at least once a day, maybe twice a day if you can. Like, oh, you've got auto watering. Like, let's just dial it down. And then it's amazing how often it just makes things happy. Like simple easy. So that was the main takeaway. And like, I'm not even a cocoa guy anymore, but I still get dozens of cocoa people asking me questions throughout the year. And it's a very nice thing that the Cocoa for Cannabis still exists. You can just go on there and there's these guides and they kind of demonstrate exactly how to do it. And then there's like people on there live. I think there's still people in the live chat just chilling, waiting to answer questions like cool gromies and shit. So not to like shamelessly plug Cocoa for Cannabis, but I think that's definitely a great resource for us in this community. And I'm glad that Doc was able to get that all together for the people out there.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate it. Yeah, it's the internet has changed so much in the last few years that it's definitely affected the way that, that our traffic works. Like we used to do really well on Google, and people searching for advice about how to grow, especially advice about how to grow in cocoa, but also advice about like grow lights and other things like that, would find the website and come to the website and meet the people and join the community. And now, I mean, Google just gives you this like AI summary. It scraped the site, of course, and tells you stuff from there, but mixed with a whole bunch of other garbage and stuff. And I don't know, it just isn't referring people through the same way. So the whole way new growers are getting their information has really changed since like the mid-teens. So I don't know, it's interesting, but yeah, appreciate the referrals for sure.
It's funny because our podcast is that way for such a long time, and then like randomly it'll get put on like recommendations. I think it's if I don't smoke in like the first 30 seconds or something, or like first few minutes of the show, or if like none of us do or whatever. But I'm not worried
Right.
about that. Like I'm not in this for the, to be honest, I'm fine with us being a niche community and attracting the people that are really passionate about growing and also bringing the new growers in as well. And, we'd probably help more people if we had a little bit better reach. But at the same time, I'm not going to sweat over every little algorithmic cue and like make. I see actual content creators who do well on social media in other spaces, and the hoops they have to jump through are so obvious that their crowd almost becomes accustomed to it. It's like a running joke that they don't say XYZ word because they'll get demonetized if they say it. So they'll say a
Right.
different word in that place and they'll make like cute little references or noises or bleep it out or whatever it is. But this show has always been about just kind of open source, kind of gromies hanging out. And if somebody swears or takes a bong hit or a dab or something like that, I'm not going to worry about us getting age restricted because that cuts our views down from 1,000 to 700 or 600 or whatever it is. It's like if people can't log in or whatever, then maybe they can listen to it on Spotify or somewhere else. And that's how a lot of people listen to it anyway. So it's an interesting
Yeah,
phenomenon,
I
the
used
social
to
media
stress
battle.
about getting age restricted so much on my channel, and it affects the raw numbers a lot. I don't really think that it affects the core viewers. And when you have evergreen content, like my video about how to buffer cocoa core that I made back in like 2018, that still just drives numbers, that those videos, no, I forgot my point.
No, it's
But there it's age restricted, but it still produces better than non-age restricted videos through time because the people that are really interested in that information, so like the audience that you really want to reach, you still reach. You
exactly.
don't reach as much as the fluff audience that isn't really interested in what you're saying, anyways.
Yeah, the main point I had to bring that up is like shout out to this community because like for a while it was like literally number one was like text links or people like copy pasting it in like DMs and sharing it directly to one another. It wasn't like being discovered on the front page. It wasn't even like
Right,
subscribers getting notifications. It was
right.
people searching it in the search bar because they know on Sunday, growing with my fellow growers will be here for 7 years running for 2 hours. And with that said, Spartan, I want to let you ask this question from Rotten Skateboards, and then we can go from there.
Oh, sorry, I forgot all about that. Thank you. Yeah, Rotten Skateboards 5009Q. Sorry, this was a long to get to, but this was left in chat. When is the cutting worth more than spending time or resources to capture all the positive attributes in the seed form? I can see for field grown, but if cutting was available, wouldn't that be the move?
I want to let Boudica take this first because he's our special guest tonight, and then we can kind of
Um,
all take a jab.
so I'd say if you're breeding, you definitely don't want to use cuttings. You want to hunt everything yourself from seed. Because if you just use cuttings, all your stuff will end up the same as everyone else's. Whereas if you hunt it yourself, you'll end up with much more unique things. I'd imagine though, if you're growing any, like, if you're monocropping and you're trying to grow something on scale, you're probably best going with clones, aren't you? You probably don't want to deal with seed. So that'd be my
Very well said.
answer.
Short and
Yeah.
sweet, but pertinent, I would say for sure. I'm curious if Tal, you've been a little quiet over there. What do you kind of think about that situation with the rotten skateboards? The question is in our Zoom chat too, if you want to reread it or need to glance back at that one.
Yeah. Um, I guess yeah, like what your goal is, right? The question is it worth more than spending time and resources capture it all in seed form? Well, I guess if you want to have seed, then no, it's not worth it. You want to do seeds and then make seeds, but um, yeah, when you get a plant, if you're growing seeds and then all of a sudden there's a plant that is unlike any other that you ever came across, that is either special in smell or potency, or maybe it gets done in 3 weeks, whatever it might be. But if there's something special, you want to take a cut of that, and then you can use that cut to produce more seeds that might be better than what you have available. You know what I'm saying? So I don't know if what he's asking is if seed is better than clone, but and yeah, generally people say, and I think I'll agree with this. Even if you have a super healthy clone, from seed has more vigor and hardiness to it. At least that's what I've experienced.
The
So
taproot
yeah,
concept or even just
taproot.
general
It seemed
idea of
like
being from seed being healthier and more vigorous. I think,
right.
Doc, you used to say for a while side by side that your seeds would surpass your clones. I remember for a while you said that. I don't know if you have
Yeah.
Oh
changed your
yeah.
stance.
No, I think I agree with Tao, and I shrunk my screen now. I can't see everybody's name, but I agree with everything that's been said. Boudica. If you're growing a small quantity of plants, you don't care that they're uniform, that you're going to give each one of them a lot of individualized attention. Um, Growing from seed generally is better. You get more variety as a home grower. I think growing from seed is usually better. Although growing from clone is much more reliable. Like you know exactly what you're gonna get, and if you grow it properly and you get a well-tested clone, then like they tell you it's gonna get 32% THC or whatever, it'll get 32%. Like you know what terpenes are gonna be there, and seeds are always because of this issue we were talking about earlier. They're just there's a bit of a gamble that you're going to turn up some, a double recessive on something that's really important on that one seed that you didn't get on any other seed. So yeah, in production, I consulted with a big grow a few years ago in Thailand that was doing all autoflowers, and they had made the decision to do all autoflowers in advance, which means that you got to grow from seed. It was by far the most difficult cultivation plan that I've ever had to work through, because you don't know how it's really hard to optimize space. It's really
Did
hard to
they
know how
make
much.
new seed or did they buy new seed every year?
No, buying all the seed in every grow, buying seed in, and then growing out these plants. But just even in the grow room, how much space do you give to an individual plant? Autos get big. They actually, for commercial production, they veg too long. We don't want to veg for a month, which is usually where autoflowers are coming in at from seed. So in commercial production, generally, I find the best success is cloning large monocrops, at least a table or something in a room. Like we'll grow 5 different strains in a room, but like all the strains in one area at least are the same because they'll grow at different heights and you want them to have equal access to light and stuff like that.
One thing that
But
you
more
said that
important
just
than
blows
that,
up autos for me, you asked why I haven't grown autos before. I grew
yeah,
two different strains that were testers, and I
yeah,
vegged them for 23 days,
yeah.
flowered them for 66 days. 99 days they were done and finished. I had backup clones of them that I could run again if I liked them, and they were killer. Like they were
Right.
amazing with just a little over 3 weeks of veg. And so when I see autos that were like marketed as finishing at 120 days, 125 days or whatever, I was like, they're slower than my photos in that regard, like,
Right.
so
Certainly, and I mean, we have a tight 70-day production cycle. So we're running photos on 70 days, start to finish, every time, growing like 12, 13 different strains, and that includes 12 days in full veg. Um, so that the part of it being faster is only true if you're growing big plants. If you're growing a sea of green, a lot of little plants, cloning really does save you time. You don't really even want the plants to grow as much as they do when you're growing a sea of green. Like, so yeah.
you just flip them
Um,
when they're tiny. Like that's this one grow, Frank Gigax, he had an
yep.
underground bunker grow, and he was saying they just cut the veg out entirely. They just take the clones from when they rooted and then flip them because they had an entire bunker full of plants, sea of green style. So it just made more sense to have them
Especially if you do
just rip.
a full 2 weeks in the clone room. Like that's the other side of this. Like, how rooted are your rooted clones? Are they like really rooted, or are they just sort of a little rooted? If you're pulling them out on day 9, that's different than if you're pulling them out of the clone room on day 14 and potting up then. And if you pull them out on day 14 and pot them up and they're all healthy and you got your cloning practices down, and that includes having your mom room down, and you're pulling really vigorous clones, I'd still want to do like 1 or 2 days at the same light cycle they were on in the veg room or in the clone room, just to minimize the stresses. But it's not to because they need to grow bigger or something. It just I like easing things in, but I'd do like a two
Acclimate
day.
them. It's like
Yeah,
hardening them off or whatever into nature, or like when you go from the LED to the HPS, ideally you keep that HPS like way high for like a day or whatever, and like I think slowly bring them into the new spectrum. I know that the science doesn't say this, but I've seen in my experience they don't necessarily love if you're going from low light to high light. It doesn't matter the change of spectrum necessarily, but like some plants don't love that. If you go from like 300 ppfd in your veg room to like over 1,000 in your flower room, it's going to be like,
yeah.
what the fuck just happened?
Especially if it's on the same day that you transplanted them and that you did some, I mean, but yeah, just going from 300 to 1,000 is a big jump. I
And that's so
like to
often the
take
case. People
75.
transplant, right? And then they flip to flower or whatever right away, just thinking like, oh, I put them in that new pot. I put them in that new space. Like they're in the flower space now, like home growers that have kind of just like maybe made it a routine or patternized it to a point that they're like, all right, I transplant, I get into the space, I flip. But you can take that 10 out of 10 down to like a 9 or a 7 or an 8 by doing these little things that might stress the plant out and not allow the roots to settle in, not allow it to settle into the new environment, the new light, whatever it is, or easing in from like instead of 300 to 1,000 in the veg space, going from 300 to 400 to 500 or whatever, and then in the flower space, starting at 600 or 750, and then dialing up to that 1,000 or whatever it is, and allowing the plant to kind of adapt a little bit more gradually.
The
Yeah, if
rule
I
with
grow for
PPFD,
personal
Jack,
smoke, sorry,
go
if I
ahead.
go for personal smoke from clone, I always give it a week out of the dome, just sort of let it ease into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, sorry.
I wanted
No,
to,
I said the rule about increasing light is you should changing PPFD. You can decrease PPFD as fast as you want, but you should increase PPFD over and above what the plants are already used to, and no more than like 75 to 100 PPFD points per day. So if you're going like 500, 575, 650, 725, 800, 875, like that's how I would ramp that up.
Good point. And that's generally how I try to do it. And I've found that the plants just don't show that shock response that they do when you, and for me, a lot of people would attribute it. And, maybe some part of it is the spectrum, like there is UVs and stuff and like CMHs and HIDs that don't exist in these LEDs in modern times. So going from one to another, there might be a little bit more than just the PPFD change. But I think the majority of the difference is going from like a low number, I don't know, 300, 500 to over 1,000 in certain circumstances, depending on where the hot spots are of those types of lights and things like that. So it's a balance for sure.
HPS makes the canopy much hotter than LEDs. So you have that factor, which can also stress out plants in different ways. The other thing, though, thinking about clones versus seeds, um, that we haven't touched on yet is seeds are so much more fun to train and to top and train early on, but specifically to top and to do like the basic top or the manifold or the main line or one of these T tops or even the cross, and getting relatively equal codominant branches coming out of that. I mean, sometimes it takes a little bit of training. It's a lot harder with clones to train for codominance. And the whole way that the clone grows with its alternating nodes, we top clones, and a lot of growers that I work with commercially top clones. But it's much more hit or miss basically than it is with topping seedlings, and you have to approach it differently and expect different results from it. So that's an advantage that seedlings have. I also, back to your point, they definitely grow faster. They definitely have more vigor and more momentum, but are you trying to grow a 4 foot tall plant, or are you trying to fill your canopy? Like, I think horizontally rather than vertically, I think in a lot of cases with growing cannabis.
I found that clones flip into flower quicker as well. So like at
Yeah, they're
week
more
two, a
sexually mature
clone
a
will
lot of the
look,
time.
they'll look more developed than a
They're just
seedling would.
waiting to go. They're like, you can
Yeah.
almost see pistils poking out of a lot of older or
Well, it's
stigmas
like
of
Yeah,
it's like
hers.
yeah,
or my mums will always have pistols on them.
yeah. You
I
keep your
wanted
moms in
to,
24 hours of light, or what's your light plan for the
Uh,
mom?
18.6, I do.
Okay.
Other than when I re-veg, if like after a harvest, if I keep a bunch of plants back to re-veg, then I'll switch it to 24-hour for like 2 days, just to sort of help trigger the plants to re-veg. I find that helps. But other than that, I keep it 18.6.
Spartan, I'm curious if you had any thoughts on the whole seed versus clone situation with the question earlier. I don't
yeah,
know if you had chipped in on that one yet.
yeah, I just a few thoughts, and it's like when I looked at the question to me, I instantly in the question he says, cutting, when is the cutting worth more than the seed? And he admits in there the time, the resources it would take, to capture all the positive attributes. And I'm thinking, what are the positive attributes, that you're trying to, compare with? And for me, I can only look through my eyes. For me, those positive attributes is like if I'm the end user, then I want something tailored to me. Something, the flavors that I want, the experience that I want, all of the things, maybe growth patterns as far as the plant goes, all of those things. And that's going to be, I'm not going to say it's impossible, but that's going to be really hard to find from a cutting that somebody else hunted for them. And it's good. I think it's more likely you're going to find that through the seed form. But there's a caveat to that, and the question is, when is it? And I think the when is it, the answer to that is when you can smoke the end product from something that somebody, or whatever it is. If it's not smoked, it's edible. Whatever the end product is, that if you could try it from somebody else's grow that you respect and maybe grow similar to them, and it hits all of the things for you, then by all means ask for a cut of that and grow it in your grow and see if you can get what you need out of it.
Right.
But if you haven't smoked it and you're just going off somebody's word, yeah, and I'm not saying they're liars. They could be 100% telling you the truth and it worked great for them, but it doesn't mean it's going to work great for you. So you have to, I mean, that's the odd thing about cannabis. It doesn't work the same for everybody. So, it's hard to follow hype because it's still, are you one of the people that fits into the group that it's gonna, fit that key for you and be medicine for you, or is it just gonna be another one of those situations more often than not, and I smoke something and be like, okay, it's good cannabis, but yeah, didn't do much for me, kind of a thing. So I
Not a
would say,
standout.
yeah, I'd say if you're able to try the end product, yeah, by all means get a cut of that, and maybe you got something there. But if you can't try it yourself, I just think you're so much better off just having the experience of hunting it yourself. Because like everyone before me said, you might find something that is great for you that somebody else would get the same thing in their garden and be like, and throw it out. So there's always that.
It's
The
amazing.
seeds are exciting. They're like a loot box. You never know what you're gonna get.
Yeah. I like that aspect of growing seeds. I mean, I'm fine with growing a plant that the breeder's telling me there's lots of different phenos of this. There's the one that tastes minty. There's I'm like, oh, which one am I gonna get? Like, let's go. Um, I'm fine with that. I think, but in commercial production, we're not fine with that. So it definitely depends on sort of what market you're in, what you're doing, how costly a failure is in your situation, and kind of what kind of risks you want to take. I thought of another big advantage that seeds have over clones, though, is that you can stick them in a drawer for a couple of years and
I was thinking that for a while.
still be viable.
You don't have to worry. You could be not growing for a bit. You could take a break. You could go on vacation. They're sitting
That's a
somewhere
real
and
thing.
they're ready.
That's one of the reasons I think so many home growers use them is because doing clones for their personal grow, like keeping a mom or even serial cloning, it's like it just makes them grow more or have more plants than they would otherwise want to keep or keep track of or whatever. They just don't need it that much. If you're growing 3, 4 grows a
It's
year,
like an
just
extra job on top of a
it's a
grow
whole
that's
extra
not
job.
necessary because you
Yeah,
can
I can.
technically just grow from seed every time and pop new
Now, if
stuff
you
every
live in
time.
Southern California or someplace like that, we can go to the store and buy clones of different varieties or whatever. That's a different thing itself too, because there's a ton of different like clones available, and that's also like shopping. And you do have some better assurance that you're going to get a quality individual.
A lot of the
Um,
stuff is like you can buy like it'll be like, oh, Gushmints is available as a clone from Purple City Genetics, and then Gushmints or Gushmints, whatever, is available as flower at the same, March and Ash
Essentially,
store
right?
or
You can
whatever you're
buy, you
picking
can
it up
smoke
from.
it. Be like, give me that plant of it. I'm going to take it home and try to grow it myself and make it even better, or whatever you want. And you really can make them even better. I think home growers do a better job of growing than commercial growers.
It's like home cooking. We have more time for the love. My wife is traveling for work more, and I've gotten back into cooking. I was really into cooking in college, but now my wife admittedly does a lot of the cooking when she's home, and she's fantastic at it. So I'm very blessed. But when she's traveling for work, I like to not have to eat out or be, left with, you know, processed garbage, shitty food or whatever. So I got myself some cast iron pans. I've been whipping it up and just living my best life. And when you make a home cooked meal, man, especially when you do it right, when you start dialing it in, like watch a YouTube video or two, and then I really think like anything, the best thing is like get your base idea if you have never done it before. Fucking look online for a little bit, but then just try it, make mistakes, learn. You're gonna overcook, you're gonna undercook a little bit, but try and get it to your liking. And the best thing is like I am a little bit picky when it comes to food and weed or whatever. So when I do it myself, whether it's food or cannabis, if I want it to be a 10-week plant, that 10-week cherry pie that no one else is growing, I can take it 10 weeks. If the other people aren't going to do it, my buddy Jack, who gave it to me, he takes it 9 weeks, maybe 8.5, maybe 8. I take it
Yep.
10 because I like how it hits at 10. Nobody else is going
Yep.
to do that for me. So like it's just like one of those things it's like when you cook it, if you like it a little bit more burnt, I take my potatoes a little bit crispier. I like my bacon a
Right.
little bit crispier, whatever. So I'm going to cook them a little longer. And at certain restaurants, like you'll be like, I like it crispy. And then it comes out and it's still like mushy or whatever in my perspective. But to them, like to make it that crispy, it's like destroying the food, or like to cook a steak over medium is a sin or something. Like some people have like
Sure.
very hard and fast food rules.
We told them we wanted well done pizza. They were like, we always do it well. Why are you insulting us? I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. I like my
Rare.
crispy crust, man.
Crispy bottom, man.
Yeah.
You got to get a
Yeah,
nice hot pizza
ask
oven,
Dave
New
Portnoy.
York
You can't
style.
have no floppy slices, man. No.
Every
Joey.
pizza is
Joey.
different everywhere. Okay, I've been to Italy in a few different cities. I've been to America, a lot of different cities like Chicago, New York, or even within New York. Even San Diego actually has some really damn good pizza, I will say. And everyone's a little bit different. They all have their own like style, right? Like a crispy bottom is a type, but there's like, different varieties, just like cannabis, right? There's
All right, Jack. I didn't mean
don't come at my pizza
yeah,
town.
get people pissed at me. Sorry.
No, I'm just kidding. But yeah, going back to cannabis a little bit, since we all touched on the seed thing a little bit, and if you have more thoughts on that, we can always fill in and jump back to that. But I was thinking about something like you can't have your cake and eat it too kind of situation. People are like, for a long time, and I read this in forums, and I believed this. I was one of the people who maybe even parroted it on early podcasts. I would say things like, if a strain yields more because something like Big Bud existed, then it's generally not going to be as good. It's going to have a bad smoke. That's what I used to think until I grew a strain called Spiked Punch. It was the biggest yielding strain I'd ever grown, and still to this day, the best yielding strain I've ever grown. And it was some of, if not the best cannabis I've ever had in my entire life. Like
Right.
mind-blowingly good. everything in that room was good. I grew Chernobyl in that room. I had 2 plants of this spiked punch. Everything was fantastic. I just dialed it in and nailed it that grow. But those 2 particular plants, unreasonably good on all. I wish they're like great white buffaloes. I wish I would have kept a cut. I sent the seeds back to the breeder because he asked for them. He's a small guy or whatever. And I don't know if he's made the F2s like he planned to or whatever. But I still look back at that as like, oh my goodness, like great yield, great high. And it looked amazing. It was like pinkish purple, like with a little bit of like green highlights. It was beautiful bud. It had everything you could ask for if you were into that kind of
It
like
was huge.
smoking high.
There's some unicorns like that, right, Jack? I think the problem is that for a while there really were some breeders that were kind of targeting the black market set where the big thing was volume and bag appeal. And they breed strains like Critical Mass that was just all about sort of how much good looking bud, even if it didn't taste good or smoke good or whatever, it was a big yielder. And I think that that kind of poisoned a lot of us from back in the day of kind of breeders that were just going after size. I think as a breeder, and be interesting to get Boudica's thought on this, I think you should go after quality, lock in quality, and then maybe work on things like size. But if you're going after size as your primary component, then you're probably not paying as much attention as you should to quality. Do you have thoughts about that, Boudica, of like selecting for multiple straight and traits or other things like that when you're doing your
Yeah, no,
feeding?
I always think you should start off definitely with the flavor and the taste first. Like it's much easier to breed something that's nice and tasty and consistent, and then start picking the better yielders that have the terps, as opposed to breeding something fat and then just hoping that it might develop some terps in a few generations. It often won't. So yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
Also, I found as well that straight that varieties that tend to produce a bit less, you can often get around that with like sea greens. You just have lots and lots of small plants in small pots, and you'll just you'll have a dense canopy, of hundreds of plants as opposed to like I don't know 60 or something like that.
Yeah, there's
If it's
always
a slow
ways to
vegger or
increase.
small yielder.
There's always
Yeah,
ways to increase yield. You could, grow it different with
Dial it in.
yeah, or scrog it, whatever it might be to increase it.
Yeah, topping, training, different
Right.
growing
Yeah.
methods like
Yeah.
Sea of Green. Some stuff does better in different environment, like in like bed, like a flower bed kind of thing, like
Right.
a situation where you got like a 3x3 bed versus like individual pots.
You,
And so
you
Yeah.
know what else I've noticed? There was one plant that I grew for a while, and the high was awesome. And that's the one I said it smelled like fucking lunch meat. It was like bologna, actually. And I don't know why, but I called it Pez. But anyway, it had it was little buds on the plant, but they were like all over the stem, up and down the stem, like mad. And I'm like, man, it looked like a weak yielder. And I'm like, I'm gonna check. So one time I ended up doing it. I took like one of my plants that I liked that looked big yielder, and that one, and I set them aside and I saved them and I weighed them. And actually, the one that I thought yielded less ended up yielding just a pinch more because it was deceiving the way it looked and the density of the bud. So just because you have big looking buds doesn't mean that if the yield is much more. It could be equivalent because I know I've seen buds that looked like massive buds, but they were airy as fuck. Excuse my
I
French.
thought I got
Oh no,
shorted back in the day. I got like a little
yeah.
tiny bud and it was like a quarter or whatever.
And
And
you're
then like
like,
when I
yeah,
broke it up,
that's
or maybe
not
it
a
was an eighth.
quarter. Yeah, yep.
And then I broke it up and I was like, oh shit, like it made like,
Because it was
the
like a rock.
normal three
Yep.
fucking joints plus. And so I felt kind of bad for like, calling him out or whatever. But he's like, grind it up, weigh it out, like it's fucking accurate, whatever. And I was like,
So
sure
yeah,
enough, it was.
that could be deceiving. Just point that one out there
What
too.
you just
Yeah.
mentioned, my Velvet Punch, Spartan might have mentioned earlier. He had one that has I think, dense bud structure. But the one, or at least I remember another guy from Michigan, Smokestacks, had one that was like very little, if it looks like it has no hairs or very little hairs or stigmas, pistils, whatever you want to call them. And his was super dense, got really purple at the end. And I had kind of two side by side. One was more like pine coney, like an OG, like the triangle open kind of spear structure. And the other one was more like cookie golf ball, like tight little, whatever nugs. And those golf ball nugs, it was like 2 ounces per whatever, like the tall quart mason jar, versus the other one was like an ounce and a half in the same size jar. So it was clear. It was almost like 1 ounce versus 2 ounces. So like 2 ounces, I think took two jars for the one pheno, but I could squeeze if I did it tight 2 ounces of dried cured bud into one of those larger mason jars. So that was just interesting because, like you said, Tao, if you don't weigh it out, and a lot of us stop weighing it out after like our first couple grows.
Yeah.
Most of us are just happy to have a harvest. We're like, fuck it, I'm gonna dry it, cure it, however much I got, I got. I got 7, 10, 11, 15 jars. Like that's how much I got. Like I don't know how
Yeah,
much
I
it
put it in
weighs.
jars. I definitely count my harvest just in jars now. Yeah.
Oh, I still weigh all mine out though. I do it for
Yeah,
breeding purposes though, so I can accurately
that's
It's
where
track how
good.
much
It's
each
good to do
pheno.
that.
It's a
Scientific,
pain in the
honestly.
ass though, mate. It's
It is
I've
a pain
like
in the
put it off
ass.
for ages, and I still do it, but
A notebook, little paper notebook with like the strain, pheno, and like yield, all that different stuff. It's like so handy
yeah.
to have.
And
Fucking
it's when you've got so many plants, even though each
Right.
plant's only small, you've still got 128 bloody entries to fill in. It
And you
takes
got to
ages.
keep them separate and don't be pinching off of one, right?
you accidentally knock that one bud off while you're trimming or pulling it out. It's like which bud is on the floor
Yeah,
somewhere.
I have to like use like painter's tape and write the number on it and wrap it around the branch so I don't mix them up. And you got to do it to every plant. It's a pain in the ass.
It's a lot of
Occasionally
work,
I'll
man.
do, yeah, occasionally I'll do like a grow just for personal smoke. And it's like, oh my God, this is great. It's so much less work. I don't have to label anything or write anything down.
When you do a
yeah.
personal grow, how many plants do you do in the area that you would do the 128 when you're pheno hunting?
Um, probably about, probably about 40 summit, 40, 50 plants, a lot less. I'll like cut it in half. I'll do them in like 1 gallons, like so it's like 6 liters, something like that. So 1 gallon containers. I'll veg them for like an extra week or so. You know, it's rare that I do that though, because I find it hard to justify not testing because it's like I could use this round to test, like,
Right.
and it feels very decadent just to sort of grow some of my mum's out just because I want a particular bit of smoke or
Best
whatever.
one you've ever grown is going to be that one, and you just burned it because you didn't test it. It's for personal
Yeah.
growth. I hear you.
It's tough, man. It's a
Yes.
sacrifice, even as like an aspiring breeder, like doing a couple test grows to deliberately stress. Like my wife, I don't think was super thrilled. I think I still have some stress test bud that was like just like C grade versus like the A grade I'm used to growing. That's like sitting in a freezer that needs to be turned into RSO, and
Yeah.
it's just when you get used to a certain quality. To stress test something and then to like have all these jars of like stuff that's sub prime when you're used to smoking prime all the time and you
Yeah.
could do better. It's just like
Yeah, that's the thing people don't realize about breeding is you think of breeders as smoking pure dankness all the time, when in reality you're testing loads of shit. So like about 60% of what you've got in your jars is crap and gets made into hash. Like
Yeah, it
I don't even like hash really, and I make loads of it because I have loads of plants that I don't want.
goes right into the
You, how do
edible
you do your
pile.
drying,
Edibles.
curing, Boudica? Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I was just saying I use most of that stuff for edibles. Yeah.
Yeah. I was curious, Boudica, how you do curing and drying. Or dry.
So I dry, so a bit controversial. I wet trim. I don't dry trim. I've messed
Okay.
about with dry trim, and I'm just not really a big fan. It's dead finicky. And I do them in like branches, so I hang them in branches, and I keep it at like about 16 degrees Celsius and about 60 to maybe about 62% humidity. It's fairly standard. I keep like a very light breeze beneath them, and it tends to take anywhere from about 10 to 14 days, and then I'll book them off into jars and I'll burp them for about a week normally. And then after that, I just sort of fill the jar up to the top so there's as little air in it as possible. And
Target humidity or moisture percentage, or what are you
no,
looking at for?
I just keep it in the sort of the low 60s because it's England, so it's quite damp in England. We don't have problems with like the Colorado crumble and stuff like that. It's not too dry, so it's never really. If anything, we have the opposite problem. It's too
For
damp sometimes.
those out there who are wondering in Fahrenheit, 16 translates to 60.8 in Fahrenheit. So that's 60, 60. That's actually pretty commercial
Yeah,
standard here in
yeah.
the commercial markets. A lot of people shoot for that. And I think that it's a tried and true and it will work if, most quality control measures are taken. And there's some debate on whether that's the most optimal or if there's something else that's better or whatever. But I think that's definitely one that will work for sure.
Yeah, it's just fairly standard. I've done it for like 20 years now, so.
gets the
Stick with
job
that.
done safely, you
Yeah.
know.
It's one of the areas when we talk about home growers being potentially better at growing than commercial growers. I do think the dry and the cure, I mean, home growers have more time, commercial growers have more equipment. So where equipment becomes important, and in the dry, it's kind of important. Like time isn't super important, but being able to hit the right temperature and relative humidity, and not just depending on sort of like a window fan or something, or even just the AC in your house, because we can rely on just kind of sucking in the cold air from our air conditioned house during the grow when we're trying to maintain a higher temperature and a higher relative humidity. But that really doesn't work anymore when we're trying to hit 60-60. Like nobody's living in a 60-degree house, and it's, if you are, it's hard to keep your humidity back up at 60 because your air conditioner sucked all the moisture out of the air.
I know a
Um,
cheap hack, cheap home grow here. There's a thing called a chill bot, or there's probably a million other devices. You can get like the cheapest little window unit, and they might only go to like 60 or whatever, but you can hack it to so it can go. People use them for like hash
yeah,
labs and
so it
stuff,
can
so you
go
can drop it
lower.
even colder. But
I'm fine with it
it'll
getting,
keep it
yeah,
at 60
60
easy.
degrees not going to be the end of the deal. But yeah, having a dedicated air conditioner for it. But that's one of the ways. And climate control during the grow is also something that I think commercial growers have a bit of an advantage on. So if you're a home grower that really wants to consistently crank out the quality, those are two things. Climate control during the grow and kind of drying equipment. It sounds like Boudica's got it well in hand.
Sometimes the
Yeah, it's quite.
natural,
The
Just in
climate
case.
here is quite favourable. I find a lot of the year for drying because it's quite cold. It's not super hot. It's not super cold, but it's not exactly warm most of the year. So the temperature tends to be perfect. In fact, it tends to be a little bit lower than you'd like it. And then if you just stick a dehumidifier on, that'll bring the temperature up to like about 16 degrees, and it'll keep the humidity perfect. So it's pretty good place to dry. To be honest with you, it's pretty decent. Like
it's
I've
one of the
heard people in
benefits of living in
Colorado
a
like really struggle and stuff because of how dry it is.
I
Yeah.
guess that's a certain benefit of living in a cold and fairly damp area. I know that it's a drawback when it comes to trying to grow outdoor, but in terms of drying your indoor stuff, it's nice. Like in California, my seasons, although they're not as bad as a lot of places, I'm not going to complain. But like my summers will get, high 80s and 90s. And with like the airflow, if I'm not using any air conditioning, which traditionally I don't, just for keeping the bill down as much as possible, um, I can keep things pretty decent during the summer. But my best grows are in the winter, fall, and spring. And the summer grow is usually the one that's like, the 7 or 8 out of 10 kind of grow, even when I'm trying to not make it a stress test grow, because for the most part, I won't run the air conditioning just to keep the plants in the perfectly optimal range. As long as my wife and I and my cats are comfortable, then I'm like, the plants will be fine. They can handle a little bit warmer than they want to be. And I'll be okay with one out of my 4 or 5 grows per year ending up as slightly less good. But like you were saying, when it comes to the drying and the curing, even though we have like less of a control and stuff, what I find, I use a little wood moisture meter. I got it cheaply on Amazon or something.
Yep.
It has little 2 prongs. You can stab it into the bud, and if you just take a couple buds, you can make them a little lump and stab it into there, and it gives you a decent understanding. To me, I like 10 to 12% range on the meter that I
Yep.
use, but some people like it a little bit drier. Some people
That's
like it
pretty
slightly
standard, Jack.
stickier.
Yeah. 11 to 12% usually, but some strains 10%, especially if they're bigger buds, 10%.
A lot of
Both
commercial
because
stuff you'll
you're
get is
probably
like
not
four to
getting all the
six.
way in there. And so it's probably higher whale into the middle of those buds. Also you just want to cut against bud rot. But I think that's something that a home growers could do more is get wood moisture meters is generally what they are for. And
That's exactly what mine is. It was a cheap little wood moisture meter. It's for like testing for like mold if there's like a leak in a wall or something. And there's like 100 different modes. But somebody asked like, what mode do you use? I don't even know what mode I use, to be perfectly honest, because I don't think there's that much of a difference personally for like testing my cannabis how I am. The main thing I've seen is I took bud that I knew was good, and I tested it and got that range. So whatever you do and find, I would do that. And then I tested stuff that I knew wasn't good, like commercial stuff that was over dried. And that was in like the 4 to 6% range or lower sometimes. So when you find that stuff that's like dusty, crusty, fucking breaks up into powder when you grind it, it's because the moisture levels are so low. that it's just gone past what like fresh produce would be good. Like it's like stale lettuce or some shit. I don't know. It's like it's not how it's supposed to be.
Yeah, it really ruins it when it's overly dried.
That's one of the things that is home growers, I think Noah often says he likes fresh cannabis, but I think it's often just because fresh cannabis has the proper moisture level versus older cannabis
Yeah.
sometimes is not kept at the proper temperature, humidity, etc. throughout time as it's transported city to city, state to state, country to country, etc. Still, I know stuff from California still ends up in the UK market. I see pictures and videos and
Yeah.
stuff from people over there, and it might actually be fake California stuff, but they're, some of the actual stuff does get there. So it's interesting. Seeds, clones, and actual flower hash, etc. Like you were saying earlier, Moroccan hash got through, and I've watched like documentaries and stuff about the soap bar. It's always fun to hear people's firsthand experiences. I never actually got to see any of that stuff. The hash we got was actually like hippies were importing it, and it was pretty good stuff from like Afghanistan usually, sometimes India, but there was a lot of different hash throughout the times. And Canada, I feel like had a deep appreciation for hash. So being in the Northeast, there's a lot of good hash up there. But I'm curious. I mentioned earlier that like I had the Velvet Punch really stood out for me. That was one that like blew me away in terms of like big yield, great high. That kind of like broke my expectations of if it's a big yielder, it's not going to have great flavor and great like stone or great high effects or whatever. Boudica, is there any that stand out for you that were good yielders as well as a good high or good flavor, et cetera? It kind of had it all.
Um, Trying to have a think now. So I've got a blue cheese from Big Buddha Seeds that's ticks those boxes. It's got great. It's got a nice like sort of blueberry cheese flavor, and it's got really nice big fat buds, and it yields well. Also my grapefruit funk that yields very good. It has like big sort of beer can shaped flowers and a very sort of skunky grapefruit taste. So yeah, but normally I find though that plants like that are very rare. Like even just finding terpy plants could be quite rare. So finding one that's got great terps and great yield is a true unicorn. So yeah, they don't come across often.
It's always nice when you do come across them, and if we don't take cuts, we always kind of kick ourselves. I'm curious, Spartan
Yeah.
Grown, you've got quite a stable over there. What's in your current stable, and maybe what are the ones that might tick that that maybe aren't in your stable still in terms of stuff that's like a great yield or great high, has it all kind of thing.
I think the problem with myself, and I'm sure a lot of humans, is my taste change, right? So if you hold on to one thing forever, sometimes it could be the greatest thing, but if something else comes around that's close, that tastes different or better in your opinion, you'll let it go. So I'm trying to think. I think probably Mac 1 might be the oldest thing that I'm holding on to. The oldest thing that I've held in my garden the longest, I'd say. Um, that one I just have never gotten tired of. Not yet. I just really like that one. But man, to try to just think of all the strains I've got. Okay, I got Mac 1, I've got Death Star, I've got Vortex, I've got Orange Vortex, I've got Spartan Puke. Um, what else do I got going in there? I have I got they're unnamed. I've got a cross with I think it's Lime Vortex is what I'm calling it right now. But it's just like I made a few, maybe 30 seeds cross with Limelight and Vortex. I've got one of those out in there. I've got the very last, I think I have one more seed actually of the Cobra Milk Vortex cross. I have one more seed in storage, but I've got one plant downstairs still to flower out to see what that's about. Um, I'm trying to think of the stuff that I haven't bred is down there. Hmm. I don't know. I got more stuff down there. I just can't think of it off the top of my head. Oh, I've got a Bliss Bud going down there still. That was the one I made too.
How's she
Um,
yielding? I know that's more of a passion project in terms of you wanted the high to be like you're taking all the stuff that makes you really feel good and good high, good vibe, etc. But that could quickly stray away from what the best yielder is. Is it average, low, or high in that range?
I'd say it's average. It's one of those ones that looks high, but it's more airy than it's not super extremely dense. So I imagine she'd be a decent hasher, but I don't know that we've ever tried. We should do that. But this one is we lost the original cut, and this is just another seed, a sister of her. So, and we have a few more seeds too. So we're just trying to hunt it again, see if we find another one that's a keeper. So I haven't even smoked this one yet. So I am excited to. I am not, so far, signs aren't great on that one. It doesn't have much of a smell, so I don't like that because the last one was extremely gassy and loud, kind of like sour diesel. Um, so I don't
I
know. I don't
prefer a
know.
big nose, whether it's
Yeah.
cannabis or wine. Fuck it. I like something that smells good.
Yeah, me too, man. Me too. So yeah, hopes aren't high on that one. I might have to pop the last couple seeds of that too. But yeah, we've been popping seeds left and right outside. We also have, I have some clones too inside, actually. We have one called Spartan Glue because it's a seed that we found in some GG4 bud. So it could be one of two things. It could be an S1 of GG4, or it could be, um, Emily did try putting some vortex pollen on the plant, and she thought she was on one branch, and we thought we were unsuccessful. Didn't find any seeds except for that one seed on the very last bud when we ground it up. And we were outside when we found it, so we planted it that same day, and it sprouted the next day. So we left it there, and so we're calling that Spartan Glue right now because it's some kind of cross, either a back cross to itself or a cross to Vortex. We're not sure yet. But it looks really cool outside. So we've got that outside. We've got a Durban tie outside, and we have a pineapple tie outside. And yeah, no, I think that's covers most of my plants. There might be a few more somewhere, but I'm not
Got
even going to
quite the
try to
stable.
figure
I'm
out.
loving it.
Yeah, I'm not trying to figure out even what's going on over at the Chicom Forge. There's a lot going on over there too.
I love that you guys are doing it big, repping for Michigan. I know a lot of good crews out there are chasing after great shit all the time, and that's why you consistently see amazing stuff coming out of Michigan. So hats off to you and all the others there that are constantly in pursuit. And the funny thing is, I remember watching Michigan Bros Grow Show, I don't know, however many years ago, and your stable was not what you just went through. It was a completely different thing. And you kind of always mentioned you had this Spartan kick mentality. If something wasn't good, it gets the Spartan kick. You're not keeping it in the garden. If it's not good, it don't stay around. You're not keeping it for compassion or sentimental reasons. Like unless maybe a patient or something, as you were a caregiver. I don't know if you still are, but for many years you were a caregiver, you would keep stuff along for people that requested that. But then as you'd introduce them to your newer stuff, if they like the new stuff, it could kind of replace the old stuff as well. And so I think you've been pretty ruthless with your selection throughout the years, and hence so doing, you've got some really fire stuff now.
No, thank you. I mean, it's a simple system, but it's an easy one to remember, and it makes sense when explained to anybody, so anybody can pick it up. But yeah, it's just like keep the ones you like, and always run something different, at least one thing different, and run it up against your keepers. And if it's better than your keepers, it joins the keepers, and something's got to go.
So I have a caveat to that plan though. So there's many times I've been keeping a plant, growing it, monocropping it, loving it, right? But like you, I always like to start up new seeds. So I start up new seeds, another one comes along, I'm like, wow, this is good. So I'm like, all right, we're gonna stop this monocropping of this one. I kept the clone though, and it just wasn't the same, This other one's better. So I grow that for a while. And then, I smoke on that for a couple months. And then I'm like, yeah, this is good, And then again, I try something different. It's better. Then I pull out the old one from, that I killed. I stopped the first time. When I redo that one and have a good plan to that, I'm like, wow, man, this shit was the legit shit. I just got used to it and I didn't realize it. So
Yeah.
I would say, like, look out for that because that happened to me more than once. I'm like, this is really good, but this one is even better. And then but I wouldn't kill it. I'd keep a clone of it. And then when I
I'd call that
revisit it,
strain
I'd be
tolerant,
like,
right?
wow, yeah,
Strain tolerance. You get used to one thing. I will say, like, certain stuff really cuts through. Like for me,
yes, you're right.
OG Kush is always good. I could smoke OG Kush every day, or I could smoke OG Kush once a month, and it's always going to get me nice and
And
high and
now
medicated
that you
and
make
feeling
me
good.
think about it,
But
like,
some stuff I almost feel like it slots into that maybe medicinal aspect because like if you're not feeling the effects, maybe it's treating you on a more subliminal level, or it's treating something in your body that's like a physical ache or pain or inflammation or something like that. It's not necessarily the cannabinoids are being activated in a way that's, psychoactive. They're
right.
acting in a way for anti-inflammatory purposes or something like that. That's healing your body in a different way. So I don't know, but I do think that the best shit cuts through. Like we were talking about PIF. maybe last week or the week before, and I could smoke a bunch of like, you know, the Beasters. And then my one buddy would come over who had the plug, who would get the piff because he went to New York or he went to PA or whatever it was. And we'd smoke one little tiny joint of that piff after smoking Beasters all day. And it was like maybe it was just such a different high and we were strain tolerant to the Beasters or whatever. But that piff just cut right through. Like it took your high from like, you felt like you were at a 10 out of 10. The piff took you to a 12 out of 10. You're at a new level that wasn't possible before because you didn't have access to that quality. And something unique within that other bud. So it's always fun to
I
look back
agree
at the
with that.
standouts.
Really good weed will affect you even if you're stoned already. Some people say there's a limit, but yeah, really good stuff seems to add another plateau.
It
But
might be a
the,
THC limit, like you hit your THC limit, but then you smoke THCV that you didn't have
Right.
saturated in
or
your
some other,
endocannabinoid system.
right?
So that's why like Vortex and all these other like THCV strains, you're like, oh man, I'm flying, even though I smoked weed all day at a cup. And then Spartan came through with the Project V, and then everybody got way higher because nobody had THCV in their systems and they were all energized and shit. So
Or some other
Jack, that
terpene.
happened to me once by taking a CBD hit. Like I was so high at a festival, and somebody's like, "This is just a CBD joint." I'm like, "What?" I'm like, "All right," I hit it. And like smoking that was like, "Whoa!" Now I'm like a different whole kind of. It was just like some different cannabinoid combination. So yeah,
I've
for
noticed
sure.
that at a concentrate level, because we always, even on this show, we've said it many times, if you're too high, one of the ways you can help yourself is with CBD. And I had access to CBD isolate, so I know it's straight CBD, nothing
Yeah.
else. And it's like a powder, a white powder. And so I felt really high. So I was at like a get together, and this was with the Michigan Bros Grow Show actually. And they had the CBD powder there. And so I dabbed that. And I really do find, and I've later since gotten CBD concentrate like dabs online. You can order them right
Yeah.
online. And I've found it again and again that if I dab CBD and then dab THC right behind it, or it doesn't matter the order, THC first, CBD after, or mix them, my high, the peak of the THC high, I feel like is lower. So I'm not as high, but I feel like it's way the fuck extended, like way longer.
Yeah, it was a
Uh,
totally different experience, dude.
yeah, it's crazy. I was
it's like a
amazed at
smoother,
just how
longer
much.
high. It's almost like
Yeah,
wine
probably.
versus whiskey or something, you know? It's like a one hits you kind of faster and harder, and the other one hits you a little bit maybe more
Sure.
gradual, and it they are almost different experiences, I think.
Yeah, something like we did, me and Baked, we dabbed, we did that. We did exactly that. We dabbed both together and then we went and started cleaning up some plants at the Trico Forge. We were just, leaf stripping and maybe it was harvest. I can't remember what it was. But anyways, it was hours later, a couple hours later, and we were talking about it. And I'm like, you know what? I'm still fucking high, man. What about you? He goes, yeah, I am too. I'm like, that's fucking crazy. When's the last time you've done one dab and you've been high for, 2 hours? So yeah, it's definitely a thing for sure.
Certain
All
strains,
right.
I think, have a longer lasting impact. Tal, I'll let you get one more comment in, and then we'll pass it around for final thoughts and shout outs.
Oh, I just wanted to share my favorite or one of my standout strains from as far as size and whatever. And it's the timer from Subcool. And I got pictures of it. I have to go over it now. Hold on, it's gonna take a second. Oh yeah, right here. So this is some outside. You can just see how massive these chunks are.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, she's thick.
And yeah, this plant was awesome. And if anyone has Time Rex seeds in their vault, you should go through them, man, because she's a beast. This one was a beast. I had it for a long time, and she was awesome.
All
And the
his stuff was
funk,
frosty as hell like that too. It was
it
so
was
potent.
it was a different funk than it was a different funk than all of the other plants, and it wasn't like a cheese funk. It's hard to explain, but yeah, you got Time Rex seeds from Subcool. You should get them wet, I believe. And yeah, this is outside, not much work on them. So
And lower light than they're gonna get in an indoor situation, so you could see chunkier buds if you look up like time rec photos.
yeah. All right, that was it.
Still respectable. No, and I'm glad that you mentioned it. He's one of my favorites of all time, and he's mentioned several times in 50 Strains of Purple, which I did just finish up. I'm going to be talking to the printer tomorrow and all that. But I want to get Doc's standout if he has one that was a big yielder and also potent or tasty. And then maybe you can do your final thought and shout out after that.
The one I'm impressed with right now is Fatso. I'm loving on Fatso. And the cut we got is a real passion fruit dominant cut. It is such a tasty plant, and it's huge. And it's a huge yielder. It's fun to grow. It's easy to train. It's cooperative. It's easy to clone. We have a huge cloning percentage from it. It's just like an all around like it's like that dog that's just like better than the other dogs, you know?
There are some that just stand out. And the Fatso, I've only had good Fatso. I've never had a bad bag of Fatso. I haven't had this passion fruit Fino, but even the other ones that are like kind of like gassy or whatever the heck, they're so good always. It's like almost Donnie Burger level for me. Like Fatso, I'm surprised that's one I haven't hyped more myself, but I haven't necessarily grown it myself yet. I've smoked it a lot and loved it. So I'm glad that you mentioned that.
Absolutely. I'm gonna have to run pretty quick here at the 8 o'clock hour, Jack.
No worries. Yeah, well, I was saying final thoughts and shout outs.
Yeah, so that could be my final thought. It's been fun being with you guys. Check out cocoforcannabis.com. Check out drmjcoco.com if you're interested in my consulting work. I got YouTube. I'm on Instagram. I do this show and I'll be back here next week. I do the Ask Dr. Coco show on Patreon. So check out my Patreon page and come to one of those. It's on Wednesday night. Now that's a Q&A show. So those are the ways you can find me. Happy to be here and happy to meet our new friend Boudica. Thanks for coming on, Boudica, and talking about your breeding practices.
Always a
Always
pleasure
love
Thanks for
having you.
that.
having me.
And I'm going to pass it next to Boudica Seeds because I am realizing my wife let me know. I think it was midnight when we started in the UK. So I think it's probably 2 a.m. there or roughly that
Yeah, it
time.
is 2
So
o'clock. Yeah.
you're soldiering on. And so cheers to you for staying up till 2 a.m. to make this show happen. And I said you could show up for half an hour, you show up for an hour, you could show up for the whole 2 hours. We're live. We're going to be here. So however long you want to be here for. And he's like, I'm going to do the whole show. I was like, heck yeah, man. Like party on. So Boudica, let the people know where they can find you if you want to be found.
Um, well, firstly, thank you very much for having me on. It's been great. I really appreciate it. You can find me on Instagram at boudica.seeds and you can check out my website, boudicaseeds.co.uk. I have a nice little cheeky buy one, get one free offer on at the moment. So if you buy one variety, you get the second one completely free. And I also do international shipping, which includes North America. So yeah, so if you're interested in any of my gear, you can get it from there or follow me on Instagram. And again, thank you so much for having me on. I really appreciate it.
I think the pleasure was ours. I think I greatly enjoyed this. I can say that for sure. And I think the rest of the panel enjoyed it as well. And I know the listeners were firing up in the chat. I'm seeing fire emojis, clapping emojis, smoke emojis, lots of people stoked and saying, great show. Everybody happy that you came on. Shout out to whoever recommended. I should probably go through my DMs and give you the actual shout out, but sorry, I forgot who actually
Yeah, it was a
recommended
chap
me
called
to.
a chap called William. Yeah, shout out to him.
Yes, yeah, William, you're the man, Will. So shout out to you for connecting us because I love getting to link up with new people, especially outside. I always say across the pond. So it was great having you and happy that you stayed with us until 2 a.m. So cheers to you. And next up, we've got Spartan Grown.
Shout out Boudica, man. Thank you for coming on and talking with us, man. It was awesome meeting you. Maybe we'll have you back. That would be great.
No, that'd
I
be
might have to
great.
look at your I might have to look at your cheese, man. That sounds very interesting. I like that. And I can get one free. I like it. Shout out chat, everybody here that inspires us to do this show every week. It's always cool. I love the live shows because you can get the questions and answers going back and forth, and it can turn the whole show into a whole nother topic. And I don't know, it kind of helps. It makes the show unpredictable, but I love it. Much love, everybody out there. Keep growing.
Always great having you, Spartan. And last and certainly not least of my panelists this evening is the American one.
Jack, as always, thanks for hosting. Boudica, nice to meet you. It's always good to see someone else who's in love with the cheese. And oh, I love you guys over the UK. You might need a little help with your government over there, though, but we won't get into that. Doc, great to see you. Spartan, always good seeing you. Everyone in chat, uh, always great to see you. Come back next week. Thanks for hanging with us. I'm the American one. We'll see you when we see you. Have a great week, everyone. Peace out.
Great to have you, Tao. And I saw a video recently that I just want to sort of end my last thought on, which is this guy had I think his place was called Crispy Pizza, and he was like super fit, like a older guy. But they said, "What's the secret? Like, how do you stay so fit? You're just making pizza all day." And he's like, "I just have one slice a day." He's like, "You have a slice every single day?" He's like, "Yeah, one slice a day." And he's like, "It never gets old." He's like, "When it's this fucking good, it never gets old." So he has a bunch of different types of pizza or whatever. And I feel like that's how cannabis can be. I think OG Kush, ChemDog, GG4, and a couple others are on my list like that. But y'all know where to find me at Jack Greenstock. Very soon on 50strains.com, I'll be having a pre-order set up for both in the US and internationally. Obviously, international is a little bit more expensive shipping, so you guys have to pay a little bit more. Unfortunately, I try to keep the cost as low as possible. I'm going to go to the printer and try and see what the costs are like in 2026. It's been a few years since I've printed a book. I am sure they're going to be higher, so expect that like everything else. But being independently published and doing it all on my own, it took a lot longer than expected this time. I think the first one was a little bit quicker, but I'm trying to do this one the very best, the first edition. So there doesn't even have to be a second edition like the first one. So, and shout out to everybody else who helped me with that. But cheers, everybody. Peace and love at Jack Greenstock. Y'all know where to find me. Jack_Greenstock on X. And cheers. Catch y'all next week. Keep growing.
Grow love, everyone.
Bye.